All right, I'll call this meeting to order at 7:02 PM. Good evening, this is a regular meeting of the Ferndale School Board of Education being held on Tuesday, June 18th. Our meeting is being video recorded and will be posted on the Ferndale Schools YouTube channel. All meetings in the Ferndale schools are held in public in compliance with the Open Meetings Act. Printed documents discussed in tonight's meeting are available to the public upon request, with the exception of any information protected by student or employee privacy rights. Board meeting information is posted on our website at www.ferndaleschools.org. If you do not have internet access and need information, please contact the board offices at 248-586-8652 by Thursday of the week prior to the meeting, and the district will do their best to work with you. 1.1, roll call, Ms. Shepherd?
Here.
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 Here. Thank you. Item 1.2, approval of the agenda. Would anyone like to make any changes to the agenda?
I would like to make 3 amendments to the agenda. First, I would like to add 2.1, which would be public comment for the budget hearing for the 2024-2025 year. I would like to remove item 4.2, the request to approve the minutes of the regular meeting, May 20th, 2024, and remove item 5.7, the request to approve the 2023-2024 budget presentation, which is redundant line item.
Other than these changes, does anyone have any additional changes to the agenda? Then without objection and with unanimous consent, the agenda as amended is approved. Which brings us to item 2, budget hearing for 2024-2025.
Good evening.
Good
evening.
As part of tonight's budget hearing, we are presenting the L-4029, which is the tax rate request form that is sent to our 4 municipalities. This was discussed at the Committee of the Whole on June 4th. We propose levying 18 mills as required by the state so that we can receive our full foundation allowance. The debt millage will be set at 7 mills. That is determined by our debt repayment obligations and our assessed property values. The sinking fund will be levied at 1.0805. It has been rolled back by Headley, which is why it's no longer the 1.3 that was originally voted on. With rising taxable values, we bring in a little over $1 million into the sinking fund. As discussed at the Committee of the Whole, we need to monitor the non-homestead millage and may need to seek voter approval in 2025 to ensure it remains at 18 mills. That's it for that one, unless there's any questions.
That's all of your budget hearing presentation done? Or just
Nope.
the L part?
Nope, then I do the 2024, 2025 original budget. Okay, these were our 24, 25 budget assumptions. This was discussed at the Committee of the Whole meeting. So we have student enrollment at 3,160 students. This is 30 FTE from the May 2024 blended membership. Our state foundation allowance that we're using is $9,808 per FTE, which is a $200 increase. This is a conservative amount. The governor's proposal included a $241 per pupil increase to $9,849. The Senate proposed $9,910, which is a $302 increase. In the House proposed $9,825, which is a $217 increase. But we don't know what they're going to go with yet. The MIPSR stabilization rate is 10.58%. In the expenditures, other special pay remains at $75,000. Unemployment is at $25,000. There's an increase of 0.2 to the hard cap, the health insurance. Retirement is budgeted at 31.36. Let's see, there's 3 additional staff are included in this budget. There are step increases for FEA, ASFA, and FAES eligible, plus 0% due to contract expiration. So no raises for those groups are included in this budget. The UAW in transportation is a step and 4%. And cabinet and exempt employees are 0% increase. These are the 3 new positions for 24-25. It's a science teacher at FHS, a resource room teacher at FHS, and a physical therapist assistant. The total cost that's budgeted for these positions is $309,000. I just wanted to note that there could be possible additional staff hired in the special education department depending on caseloads. Okay, yep. This next page is the 24-25 budget by revenue by function. Total revenue is $50 million, and this is broken out by local, state, and other. The federal revenue did go down, and this is due to the ESSER grants, the expiration of ESSER grants. On the next page, the total instruction is budgeted at $28,500,000. Total support services is budgeted at $21,947,000. And then if you flip to the next page, total expenditures is budgeted at almost $52 million. We are projected to have excess expenditures over revenue of about $1.9 million. And so this will, the estimated ending fund balance will be $7,154,000 approximately, which is 14% of our fund balance. Our fund balance is revenue divided by the fund balance. So then, if you flip to the next page, the primary changes in, the primary changes from prior year budget revenue are, we had increase in property taxes. We had a decrease in MIPSR's payments. We had a decrease in ESSER grants. And we had a decrease in the Oakland County mental health grant of $297,000. I wanted to point out, oh, wait, I think I missed. Nope, I think I'm done with that page. Okay, this is the 24-25 primary changes from prior year budget expenditures. So we had a decrease in MIPSR's So when revenue decreases, then expenses decrease. We had a decrease in the retention and the enrollment bonus. We have an increase in 3 new staff members. The Governor Whitmer is proposing free pre-K for all, but since the state, it's not approved yet, we do have an increase in our budget for 2 Little Eagles classrooms that move to the general fund. That cost will change depending on if the grant is approved or not. It will move into GSRP funding. We have an increase in 3 new staff of about $309,000. There could possibly be more increase in staff, special ed staff for compliance. The budget does not have any expenditures for summer school 25-26. And in the athletic, there is increased cost for salaries, officials, and a new sport. And then that's it. Do you have any, oh, and yeah, do you have any questions?
None?
I feel like we talked about it a long time last, when we met for the cow. I mean, I know we're all thinking about this and have a lot of worries, but I don't have any questions today for Dawn because I do feel like she answered all of our questions for me.
Do we have an answer on local tax at this time, or? No, okay.
She did. She said it. Like today, she can talk about it.
Yeah, I just, a question that I've fielded a lot is questions about potential exemptions that commercial and industrial property have for local tax and how that may or may not affect revenue for the school district. So, and it's been one that I haven't been able to answer, so hoping to get any clarity we have, so.
I would have to contact the 4 municipalities
Right.
to gain information about that.
Okay.
Dawn, just for my own information, so I'm on page 8 of your budget where it's instruction, and then it's instruction, added needs, adult education. And then you go down to support services, and the second line is instructional staff services. Can you just help me understand what that is versus instruction?
That is instruction, the top section are expenses in a classroom. Like a teacher or
Yep.
something in a classroom.
Yep.
The instructional staff services would be an aid or a support.
So it has to do with classification too? Okay, thank you for that.
My only other question is clarifying the difference between the 742,000 decrease in MIPSR's payment in revenue versus the decrease of 896 in expenditure. Yeah, yep, just clarification on that difference.
Well, this year we received all the MIPSers have like 147 and then a letter. We received some one-time funding amounts. I think it was E.
Oh,
And
okay.
we're not projected to get that next year.
Gotcha. Thank you.
So Dawn, just for clarity, this MIPSR's amount is based on not the projected changes in MIPSR. This is like what it is currently.
Yes,
Right,
exactly, yes.
I was just making sure like there wasn't any of the proposals that were, got you.
I appreciate
But
that
if
for
there
the
is
record.
a like the governor's proposal, then we will see this change pretty significantly, correct?
Yes, possibly, depending on what is voted on at the state.
Yep.
Thank you so much for the clarification.
That won't be getting close to that deadline.
Mine could just do one about Little Eagles. With the expenditures, the increase in Little Eagles cost for 2 classrooms. Why, if we, like, compared to prior year, if we had 4, and now we're only gonna have 2, why do we have an increase in expenditures?
Because we decreased the revenue because there's only 2 classrooms. So our revenue went down. And so we had to, typically the Little Eagles is in there, in like the Little Eagles budget, we had to just shuffle things around because our revenue decreased, so our expenses are going up.
And the rationale for the increase in the GSRP classrooms is the free, universal pre-K, the push from Oakland County, increase your, GSRP classrooms. So that is also one of the ones that will significantly change once we get an approved budget from the state, and as long as that budget says what they've told us it was gonna say. I don't know if that answered you, Sarah, I'm sorry.
What you said, I understand the reasoning for
Okay.
going from 4 to 2.
Okay.
Totally get that. Mine's
the-
just trying to understand why, if we're seeing a decrease in the number of classes compared to prior year, why the expenditures that we have is going to be more. Is it just where things are I understand, because I know we've got 3
Yep.
different programs
Yep,
within like
yep.
the schools, so it's just how it's being,
Yeah. At the
budgeted.
root of it, it is just the
Okay.
puzzle of the classifications. Jump in, Dawn.
Yeah.
But, but it is, in short, Little Eagles was paying itself.
right.
And now there's less Little Eagles, which means, for now, we don't have anything to offset that.
Got
You
it.
see what I'm
Okay.
saying?
Yep.
Did I do, how'd I do?
Yep.
Thank you.
Do we have any indication from the state about timeline on the budget?
We're pushing for July 1.
Okay,
It's been a lot of discussions,
yes, I know,
but we need
okay.
July 1, so that's what we're hoping.
Just to clarify, we're required to pass a budget now, but the state's not required to pass a budget yet. So we're trying to base it on the best guess that we can have what's gonna happen in Lansing. Okay?
Thank you so much, Jen. I'm so glad I didn't have to say it. Thank you, Jen.
I'll say it.
Thank you.
And then we do have a budget amendment on the calendar, what is it, December?
We do it in December instead of January, yes.
Yeah.
Any other questions from the board? Thanks, Dawn.
Thank you, Dawn.
Thank you, Don.
That brings us to 2.1, public comment for the budget hearing. This is a time for public participation in the budget hearing. We ask that you identify yourself and list contact information on the contact sheet. To help administrators follow up with you on your comment. If you do not wish to do so in writing, please identify yourself at the podium. I will call on people who have completed the comment sheet first. And each person will have 1 opportunity to address the board up to 3 minutes. Comments or questions should be directed to the board president. Vice President Fulmer will raise her hand when your time is within a few seconds of expiring. And this period of public comment is for the budget hearing specifically. And this period of public comment will end at the close of this part of the agenda. So I have 1 budget hearing comment sheet, and that's Trina. And Brooklyn.
Let me just confirm, 3 minutes?
Yes.
Okay.
So I thought, I'm Trina, and as a parent, it's always good to make sure we have the kids also commenting. So I said to Brooklyn on the way in, what's one thing you really like about your school, right? So what did you say?
Math.
So really likes math, so the budgeting of the curriculums and such, right? And then what's one thing that you would like to be different?
Have more lunch time.
More lunchtime, right? There you go.
We only get like 11 minutes.
Yeah, that can be 11 minutes, yeah, okay. Well, you'll have to figure it out. And so I just wanted to say thank you all for passing the resolution last month. A couple weeks ago, something, talking about fully funding our schools. And I appreciate the comments that just happened. And it is ridiculous to me that y'all as a body have to pass a budget when you don't actually know what the income is. So I just wanted to go on record saying that's unfortunate that our state legislators put you all in this position yearly, right?
And I also want to say that my mom is a chicken.
Okay, and we talk about chickens a lot, too. Okay. But I just wanted to, and unfortunately, I think I was just not looking at the board docs correctly, because I couldn't actually see the detailed budget before this meeting. So it's possible that some of this is in the documents that y'all have in front of you. But so I just wanted to, flag special education. I think that there could be a lot more transparency and clarity to parents about how those funds are used. If we're allocating funds and then we don't get staff to come in. I was a little bit surprised to hear that there are some records that indicate that Edison Max costs up to $100,000 a year per student, and we've dramatically increased the number of students that we had there from 0 to, I'm not sure what the current one is, but I could imagine we could probably develop some really amazing programs here at Ferndale for a similar amount of money, if that's truly what it's costing us. And also just would say that perhaps it's cheaper to first send students to other districts for self-contained programs instead of moving right away to a center-based, the most expensive option, right? And I've noticed that we're not always doing that full continuum with special education, particularly the emotional impairment and behavioral kids.
30 seconds.
Okay, and then so just was curious how restorative practices is represented in the budget, right? If that's something that we're for real about, right, then we should be able to see it and feel it in the budget. Also want to say that TCEC kids, right, that are sent there because of behavior issues, I'm curious how we're budgeting for the programs that happen in this building to make sure that those kids get the same opportunities, such as the Oakland tech programs and other things like that. My understanding is they don't have access to those things. And then finally, just wanted to encourage y'all to think about in the future, perhaps doing a forum where you could, before one of these budget hearings, for parents to break down some of the, and maybe not just even for parents, but for students, for lots of folks, right? Because I'm sure people would be interested in learning more about how you spend the money. Thank you. And anyone. And chickens.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment on the budget? All right, so that portion of the budget hearing now is closed, which brings us to item 3, just regular public comment, which is the same premise. I'm not going to reread the statement, but except for the last part, that this period of public comment is for both non-agenda items and issues that are on the agenda. Public comments will end at the close of this part of the agenda. In the event the number of people wishing to comment requires longer than 30 minutes, public comment will temporarily be postponed. Complaints about staff should be made outside of board meetings and should follow the applicable board policy. Please contact the superintendent's office if you have any questions regarding this item. The board cannot respond to complaints about employees in public. This is meant to promote fairness to the staff person and the complainant. And then the Ferndale Public Schools community acts with great civility toward one another. Please help us to maintain that tradition during public comment. And I have one comment sheet, Lori Scott.
Good evening. My name is Lori Scott. I live at 965 West Hazelhurst, across from what used to be the Kulik Community Center. The last time I was here, last fall, we had a different superintendent, and I haven't had a chance to come back, so I know you guys have been through a lot of changes. But I'm very concerned about the condition of the playground at the Kulik Center. It's in dire need of wood chips. There's a beautiful maple tree whose roots are rising above the ground, and it's quite a tripping hazard. And there hasn't been any wood chips laid on any of the playground equipments probably for a couple years. So this is a playground that is heavily used by especially young families in the community. It's an opportunity for, now that the school district owns this property, an opportunity for the community to know that children are valued here and that we are a community that takes care of our kids. So I'm hoping that some action can be taken to deliver wood chips. And there's a pretty heavy dead limb that's now buried in some weeds that are growing up on the west side of the Kulik Center. So I don't, it's hard to know if this is, I don't know if the Ferndale Parks and Rec takes care of this space or if you're taking care of the space. I haven't seen any announcements. I haven't read any emails, and so I'm just putting it out there for you. And I just like to say that thank you for the great educational opportunities that you provide to your students. Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Mrs. Scott, I just want to let you know that presently the playground is still under lease with the city of Ferndale, and they're maintaining the grounds. The playground is a separate lease from the property, from the building itself,
So the playground and the green space are all part of the city right now?
right now. Yes, ma'am.
Is there a time, what is the time frame for that?
The time frame for,
Will that be under the city's purview for the next year, 2 years? Do you have a date?
not a date. So right now, that lease ends the end of the month, June 30th of this year. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll contact the DPW about that.
Yeah. But my intent was to order the wood chips when we order for the rest of the district.
I
So-
noticed new wood chips at the Ferndale Lower Elementary School were delivered this spring. I
Yep.
guess.
We order them every August. We replenish the engineered wood fibers. We'll do the same there.
Okay.
Okay.
So that will be on your delivery list in?
If it can wait until August, otherwise I'll ask the city if they can take care of it. They probably have some already stockpiled someplace.
Okay,
Okay?
thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other public comment? All right, public comment is now closed. Brings us to item 4, consent agenda. 4.1, request to approve minutes of the special meeting committee of the whole, May 6, 2024. 4.2, request to approve new hires, resignations, and transfers. Yeah, we switched the numbers. Request to approve new hires, resignations, and transfers. 4.3, request to approve bills and accounts for May. 4.4, request to approve Michigan High School Athletic Association Resolution for 24-25. And 4.5, request to approve MASB 24-25 renewal for board book premiered narrative. Does anyone wish to remove an item from the consent agenda for questions or discussions later? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. Moved by Jackie,
Second.
seconded by Mary. Roll call, Ms. Shepherd?
Yes.
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 Yes. Thank you. With 7 yes votes, the motion passes and the consent agenda is approved. Item 5, action items. Please note that all the action items being voted on tonight were discussed in depth at committee of the whole meeting held on Tuesday, June 4th. We invite and encourage community members to attend our committee of the whole meetings, which are also open to the public. Which brings us to item 5.1, request to approve the Ferndale Association of Educational Secretaries contract for 2024 through 2026, effective July 1, 2024.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Tom Shelton, Director of HR for the district. Pleasure for me to be here tonight. Great pleasure for me to introduce this agreement that we came to with the Ferndale Association of Educational Secretaries. So a couple, I guess, preliminary comments I wanted to make before we get into the particulars and I answer any questions you might have prior to approval. As you know, we we adopted a new method of negotiating this year with two of our groups, with our secretaries group and our teachers group, called interest-based negotiations. And with IBB, we had probably a longer period of negotiations than usual, but a much more productive and a much more collaborative process. So the contract that's presented for you for consideration this evening is definitely a result of that collaboration and hard work. I'd like to acknowledge our district team, many, if not all of whom are present in the room tonight. Felicia Wright, Tom Mays, Stephanie Hayes, Dawn Huntley, myself. Did I get them all? Did I miss anybody? I think that was it. So we had a team of 5 on the district side, and we worked really hard on this contract in particular. I also want to thank our phase group. Ms. Jean Bachram is here in the room tonight. Jean is the leader of the phase group, was instrumental in the IBB negotiation process. As we've talked about before, one of the hallmarks of IBB is the importance of listening. Whereas traditional negotiations focuses on taking positions and drawing lines in the sand, and this is my non-negotiable. With IBB, it's all about listening and trying to understand the perspective of the other party, and then from there, trying to identify common interests. Where do we have common interests? And in almost all the topics that we discussed with the secretarial group, and I don't know if Jean would agree with me because I didn't run this by her before I came here tonight, I would identify 3 big ones, 3 big common interests that we had, and that is about attraction for employees, attracting new employees to the district to fill our positions, retention, making sure that our existing employees feel valued and want to stay here in the district, and then sustainability, financial sustainability, as well as overall sustainability. So those, I would identify those 3 as the hallmarks of our negotiations. A few highlights of the contract in front of you for approval tonight. This is a 2-year agreement with a 4% in the first year of the agreement and no percentage increase in the second year. In the second year, however, what we have done is eliminated the second tier of the contract. So the Secretary's contract had 2 groups and then 3 divisions within each group, 12-month, 11-month, and 10 months. So with that change in year 2 and moving all those group 2 employees to group 1, we've essentially eliminated 3 employee groups of the 6, which is good for both retention as well as for efficiency for the district. And so that was a good move for us as well as for the association. Another move that we made through negotiations is eliminating the bottom 4 steps of the salary schedule. That was a move that was done, I believe, 2 years ago, 2022, through a letter of agreement. Again, trying to make sure that we are making our district attractive for new employees coming in. So eliminating those bottom 4 steps will now be memorialized into the contract. We also made some changes on the upper steps 8 through 10, to keep the distances between the steps more equal, and then phasing in 2 new steps at the top of the scale, step 11 for next year and then step 12 for the year after that. Some additional highlights, we negotiated modest increase in longevity and severance pay, again, valuing our employees and making them want to stay and making them feel valued. We had some discussion a number of days, so the 10-month group 2, which is the majority of our building secretaries, have been all over the place in recent years in terms of number of work days. They were at one point at 189, at one point 196 days. In the end, we agreed to 193, which seemed appropriate in terms of the workload that they typically have to do in the buildings before school starts in August and after it's out in June. We're most proud, at least on the district side, I think we're most proud about our agreement on professional development, where we came to some agreement on professional development opportunities, carving out for secretaries training and PD for things like MyStar, pupil accounting, first aid, safety, skills like, Excel skills, Microsoft Word. I mean, the restorative practices, the possibilities are limitless. And part of that is us sitting down with the secretaries before the start of the school year and designing a plan for the year, where we identify the skills that we want to target for our employees. And that'll become even more essential, we think, as we start to see more and more turnover and bring new employees into the system. We want to make sure that they're trained in the systems that we need them trained in. And it's good for the employees for their professional development as well. And I think most notably, as long as we're able to manage that training during early release time, during days when students aren't in school, which is our intention, as long as we manage that during school time, that's not a dollar increase to the budget at all. So that's really a win-win for all of us. We had some discussion about medical, specifically making sure that if we are asking secretaries to do things like administer first aid, administer medication, that the appropriate level of training is there for them, that we're providing them the appropriate supplies to do that. And part of that also is an ongoing dialogue, so that we're constantly talking about issues that may come up. As, for example, we get some more medically fragile students in our buildings, that dialogue is there so that we can talk about issues that come up and strategize about them. We talked about discipline expungement. This has not been an issue for us to this point, but it's something that we wanted to, that many businesses and organizations are doing, kind of setting a guideline for, after, in this case, 18 months, minor discipline will be expunged from the discipline file. Some important notes that are in the document that I shared with you, but I just want to make sure I highlight that does not include major discipline or discipline that would fall under mandatory reporting or mandatory record keeping. And of course, part of the language is that we're following state and local and federal laws in terms of anything that can or can't be expunged from discipline files. And then the last thing I would highlight, and I can answer any questions that you have, is about dues deduction. We did agree with the secretarial unit to manage their dues deduction for them, and that's obviously completely voluntary, and employees will still have other options to do that as well. While that was a prohibited topic, many employees got in the habit of putting them just as a recurring charge on their debit cards or credit cards, and many employees may continue to do that. So doing the dues deduction is just one more option that we're able to provide employees if they choose to do so, but still completely voluntary. So I can answer any questions that you have, but I believe this is a very fair agreement and one that kind of meets those standards of our common interests that we identified at the beginning of this process. I can answer any questions now.
No one's going to be surprised that I have a couple of questions. And Tom, you answered one, so I think you've seen them. First, thanks to you and your team for this great work. This might just be a copy edit. I just want to make sure I know what we're agreeing to. So on the top of page 32, section 2, number E,
Yes.
ends with adjustments to steps 8, 9, and 10 to provide for, and then
Yes.
it's blank.
Yes, that's my typo. My
Okay.
apologies. So the rest of that sentence should say to provide for more equal space between steps. So what we call in negotiations smoothing out the steps.
Okay,
And that should be reflected in the salary schedules that are a little bit later on in that document.
okay. You answered the question about discipline expungement. Page 34, the third paragraph talks about the board's role in protecting staff as it relates to medical situations. And there's the sentence, the board agrees to make available reasonably necessary safety materials to help protect the secretarial staff. So I want the secretarial staff to have all that they need to do their job. The specific language that the board agrees to make available feels lawyerish.
It is. It is.
And just help us understand what we're agreeing to.
Sure. Yes, thank you for the question. So in negotiations language and contract language, the board refers to the district. So
Thank you.
when it comes to the contract, I am the chief negotiator for the district, and I am negotiating on behalf of the board, on behalf of the district. So language in there that says the board will provide essentially means the district will provide. And that's done through existing allocation channels in the
Okay,
buildings.
great, that makes sense.
I'll entertain a motion to approve item 5.1, request to approve the Ferndale Association of Educational Secretaries contract for 2024 through 2026, effective July 1, 2024.
I'll move.
Moved by Jonathan,
Second.
seconded by Peter. Any other discussion on the motion?
No, I just wanted to thank you, Tom, and your team, and the Secretary Union, and I'm excited to see this new process of negotiation take off and actually flourish in this situation. So,
Awesome.
thank you.
Thank you.
Here, here.
Roll call, Ms. Shepherd?
Yes.
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 Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. With 7 yes votes, the motion passes. And item 5.1, request to approve the Ferndale Association of Educational Secretaries contract for 2024 through 2026, effective July 1, 2024, is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 5.2, request to approve iReady proposal.
Good evening, everybody. Good to see you. So as we discussed 2 weeks ago, district is interested in moving away from using NWEA as the benchmark assessment administered for math, kindergarten through 10th grade, and reading, 2nd grade through 10th grade, and moving to Curriculum Associates iReady benchmark assessments. Most of the information that I shared 2 weeks ago stands. I did want to add a couple of pieces of information. One, I was asked, what did we pay for NWEA this current year? This year, we paid $27,050 for NWEA. The updated proposal from Curriculum Associates is $32,697 for the assessment part of the package. $17,600 will cover 3 full days of staff professional learning throughout the year to ensure that the tests are not only administered correctly and appropriately, but that the teachers and principals know what to do with the data and can actually use that data to positively impact instruction. Good. Everything else is as it was 2 weeks ago.
I'll entertain a motion to approve item 5.2, request to approve iReady proposal.
So moved.
Moved by Peter,
I'll second.
seconded by Jackie. Any discussion on the motion?
Just thank you for all the research that's gone into doing this. Much appreciated. I'm glad to have a tool that sounds like is going to be a lot more useful for all involved in the assessment process.
We believe it will be, yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Roll call, Ms. Shepherd?
Yes.
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 Yes. Thank you. With 7 yes votes, the motion passes, and item 5.2.
Thank you.
Request to approve iReady proposal is approved. You're welcome. 5.3, request to approve Chartwell's contract renewal, fiscal year 2024, 2025.
So the district is seeking approval from the school board to renew the contract between Ferndale Public Schools and Chartwell's to provide food service management for 24-25 school year. The current contract was signed during the 2021 school year and ends 24-25. In the board agenda item, what's provided to you is some budget assumptions for the next year's budget, as well as the proposed management fee and admin fee for the contract. The contract has already been reviewed and approved by MDE, and tonight we're putting forth a recommendation for the board to offer approval, to provide approval.
I'll entertain a motion to approve item 5.3, request to approve Chartwell's contract renewal for fiscal year 2024, 2025.
I'll move.
Moved by Jonathan. Seconded by Jackie. Any discussion on the motion?
Excited for another year.
The only one I had was, I know I'd read through like the email that was attached on there about it, where it said like there were no, I was trying to understand, there were no assumptions, or, I don't remember how it was worded.
In the email
Yeah,
from MDE?
yep. That it had, there are no guarantees for the 24-25 school year.
Correct.
Does that mean, or does that refer to like, when we were talking about the number of meals or that, is that what that's referring to, or that's something different?
No, it's actually no guarantees for the amount of meals that we're counting as a part of the budget, so there's
Okay.
no base, right? Hopefully, we exceed what we've served this year. Our intent is to increase participation.
Okay, that's what I just wanted to make sure, like when we had, where they had the meal counts on
Yep,
whatever page it is,
In the agenda
51,
item?
that, yeah, that's not, okay.
that's
Awesome.
based on this year's trends. And so,
Okay.
yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And then I just wanted to follow up from our committee of the whole to see if at this time there were any updates on the potential expansion of opportunities with bringing on a chef.
There is, so I
Okay.
included that.
Oh,
So
right.
This budget does include the opportunity for one chef.
And then,
And I provided the budget for you so you can see it. I'll tell you where explicitly is in the budget. So on page 55, and manager payroll and fringe, it's 149,500. Of that, 63,000 has been earmarked for a chef.
and then with that,
We'll have to advertise.
gotcha, yeah. And then with that, is that potentially expanding our opportunity to do cooking beyond the heat and serve?
It
Yeah.
absolutely is.
Okay,
It
great.
absolutely is.
Thank you.
It's very limited, but it does provide for that,
For sure.
yes.
Thanks.
I'll entertain a motion to approve item, already did that, right? Roll call, Ms. Shepherd.
Yes.
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 Yes. Thank you. With 7 yes votes, the motion passes, and item 5.3, request to approve Chartwell's contract renewal fiscal year 2024-2025 is approved. Item 5.4, request to approve technology design for bond work contract extension.
Okay. Presenting them. Okay. Let me get to the top of that. Yep. So the district is seeking to extend its partnership with Integrated Design Solutions LLC and performing design and oversight of its bond work. This extension will provide for project management associated with work that is intended to take place next summer at UHS with respect to classroom renovations. At TCEC, it'll be digital clocks, and at the new office established for UHS High School. This contract will extend through the end of 2025.
I'll entertain a motion to approve item 5.4, request to approve technology design for bond work contract extension. Moved by Sarah,
I'll second.
seconded by Jonathan. Any discussion on the motion? Roll call, Ms. Shepherd?
Yes.
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 Yes. Thank you. With 7 yes votes, the motion passes. And item 5.4, request to approve technology design for bond work contract extension is approved. Item 5.5, request to approve technology purchases for one-to-one device initiative.
Just getting to the agenda item. So the next initiative also entails technology expansion. The district is looking to purchase up to 500 student Dell, 3110 Chromebooks and associated licenses. All devices will be purchased through Presido, utilizing the REMC spot competitive state bid at a total expenditure of not to exceed $115,650.
I'll entertain a motion to approve item 5.5, the request to approve technology purchases for the one-to-one device initiative.
So moved.
Moved by Peter,
I'll second.
seconded by Mary. Any discussion on the motion?
I just wanted to note that I appreciate from the discussion, the proactivity and the sustainability of this plan, how all these were bought, sound like in general with a one-time money given to the district back in the day, and that we're planning for how some of these devices are going to age out, and we're going to take care of it just a little bit by a little bit every year before it's an issue. So thank you for that.
Roll call, Ms. Shepherd?
Yes.
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 Yes. Thank you. With 7 yes votes, the motion passes. And item 5.5, request to approve technology purchases for the one-to-one device initiative is approved. Item 5.6, request to approve UHS audio-visual standard and TCEC clocks.
Yes, all right. So we'll continue with respect to district bond work that's planned for UHS. We're looking at classroom audiovisual systems and clocks throughout the district as part of our bond work. And we're at that point where we're looking at upgrading the technology that's supportive of UHS. So clocks and what I call to be interactive boards, because we're doing it this summer at FECC as well as at Upper. So we're looking to do the same work with install of the technology in classrooms at UHS. This board agenda item will afford the district to continue that work and providing digital clocks for the main office and support classroom audiovisual purchases up to $368,480. TCEC would also receive those digital clocks configurations and installations up to $80,686. And we're also asking for a little bit of contingency up to $25,000 as a part of this budget board agenda item. The total contract amount is $449,411. It's be funded through the bond.
I'll entertain a motion to approve item 5.6, the request to approve UHS audio-visual standard and TCEC clocks.
So moved.
Moved by Jackie. Seconded by Jen. Any discussion on the motion?
I just wanted to point out a couple things that was shared with us in the committee of the whole, is that the TCEC funding for the audiovisual, it was through grant money, so that's a savings for us. And I just want to commend the technology team for being proactive and putting out the bid for this in 2022 so that we could lock in the price then, so that we would pay that price now.
Yeah.
roll call, Ms. Shepherd?
Yes.
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 Yes. Thank you. With 7 yes votes, the motion passes, and item 5.6, request to approve UHS audio visual standard and TCEC clocks is approved. Item 5.7, request to approve the final 2023-2024 budget amendment, second amendment.
Hello again.
Hello?
This is the second amendment of the 23-24 budget. This was discussed at the committee of the whole. The first column is actual 22-23, and that's there for comparison purposes. The next column is the first amendment of the 23-24 budget, and then the third column is the second amended budget. And then the difference column is the difference between the first and the second amendment. The estimated revenue for, oh, yep, wait, where are you? Oh, I was going over the revenue.
Sorry.
You want to go back one? Yeah, right there, okay. So the estimated total revenue for 23-24 is projected to be $51,407,000. It's an increase. And then the next page is the budget by function by expenditures. And if we look at the third column, the total instruction is projected to be $28,959,000. The total support services is $22,118,000. And then if you flip to the next page, the total ending fund balance is projected to be $52,568,000. We are projecting to, or estimating, we have excess expenditures over revenue of $1.1 million. Our beginning fund balance was $10.2 million, so our estimating ending fund balance is $9,103,000. If you go to the next page, this is the primary changes from budget amendment 2 revenue. We received an out-of-school time grant for $556,000 and a summer discovery grant. Our revenues decreased a bit. And in the state revenue section, we received a Back on Track grant for $402,000, and we had a prior year adjustment for $325,000. So then the primary changes on the expenditures were there was a staff retention bonus that amounted to about $975,000, and enrollment bonus of $309,000. That's it. Do you have any questions? No? Okay, I'm requesting to approve the 23-24 budget amendment 2.
I'll entertain a motion to approve item 5.7, the request to approve the final 2023-2024 budget amendment, second amendment. So moved by Jackie.
I'll second.
Seconded by Jonathan. Any discussion on the motion? Roll call, Ms. Shepherd?
Yes.
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 Yes. Thank you. With 7 yes votes, the motion passes, and item 5.7, the request to approve the final 2023-2024 budget amendment, second amendment is approved. Item 5.8, request to approve 2024-2025 original budget.
Yes, this is what we discussed in the budget hearing. I'm requesting to approve the 2024-2025 original budget.
I'll entertain a motion to approve item 5.8, request to approve the 2024-2025 original budget.
So moved.
Moved by Peter,
I'll second.
seconded by Jonathan. Any discussion on the motion?
I want to thank those advocating for more funding for 24-25. Shout out to Trina in the room, shout out to Camille, shout out to all the associations that are represented in the collaborative effort right now to advocate for more. Yeah.
July 1.
Mhm.
Roll call, Ms. Shepherd?
Yes.
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 Yes. Thank you. With 7 yes votes, the motion passes, and item 5.8, the request to approve 2024-2025 original budget is approved. Item 5.9, request to approve the cafeteria 24-25 budget, Chartwells.
Okay. As discussed at the committee of the whole, this is the 24-25 cafeteria budget. This was the second year of CEP, which is Community Eligibility Provision. With CEP, every student at Ferndale was able to get a free breakfast and a lunch. This program has been well received by students. We are estimating $1,742,000 in revenue and $1,715,000 in expenditures. The estimated ending fund balance will be $315,783. I'm requesting to approve the 24-25 cafeteria budget.
I'll entertain a motion to approve item 5.9, the request to approve the cafeteria 24-25 budget for Chartwells.
I'll move.
Moved by Jonathan,
Second.
seconded by Peter. Any discussion on the motion? Roll call, Ms. Shepherd?
Yes.
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 Yes. Thank you. With 7 yes votes, the motion passes, and item 5.9, the request to approve the cafeteria 2024-2025 budget, Chartwells is approved. Item 5.10, request to approve the resolution millage 2024.
This has to do with the taxes, and we discussed this at the budget hearing. This is the form we send to each of the 4 municipalities, so they will collect our taxes. Request to approve the L4029.
I'll entertain a motion to approve item 5.10, the request to approve the resolution for millage 2024.
So moved.
Moved by Jackie,
Second.
seconded by Jen. Any discussion on the motion? Roll call, Ms. Shepherd?
Yes.
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 Yes. Thank you. With 7 yes votes, the motion passes, and item 5.10, the request to approve the resolution for millage 2024 is approved. 5.11, request to approve 2024-2025 Student School Activity Fund Resolution.
We are seeking approval for this budget, which we discussed at the committee of the whole. This is the 4th year that this budget needs to be approved. There was an accounting change. This budget covers various expenses, including like National Honor Society activities, principal activity funds, sports programming supported by donations. Those type of funds go into this activity fund. So the revenues are $197,000. The expenses are $260,000, and the fund balance is projected to be $161,000. We request your approval to approve this budget.
I'll entertain a motion to approve item 5.11, the request to approve the 2024-2025 Student School Activity Fund Resolution.
So moved.
Moved by Peter,
Second.
seconded by Jackie. Any discussion on the motion? Roll call, Ms. Shepherd?
Yes.
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 Yes. Thank you. With 7 yes votes, the motion passes, and item 5.11, the request to approve the 2024-2025 Student School Activity Fund Resolution is approved. Thank you. Which brings us to item 6, Superintendent's update.
Good evening. So as discussed at Committee of the Whole, I am very excited to have a presentation for the board and the public here today about a proposal that was received from M-City to be our potential dynamic plan facilitator as we go into our dynamic planning process for the 24-25 school year. So it's my pleasure to introduce Carl Schmidt, who is president of M-City, who will be presenting a brief overview of the proposal.
From a microphone perspective, do I have to sit here? Okay. I do have a clicker. If I give you, do you have a USB?
I do. Look at
That
you.
way you don't have to.
Okay, hold on, let me get my down.
Good evening, board.
Good evening.
If you've had a chance to look at our original proposal, you'll see that in addition to my day job, I'm president of the Board of Education over in Troy. So it's very interesting to me to be able to sit and watch your meeting progress. And I do have news from the Capitol, if you're curious, before we get into this, which is my daughter is actually the chief of staff for Senator Sarah Anthony, who is the state Senate Appropriations Chair. So she called me on the way over here because she's asking me all kinds of questions about it. So I can't tell you most of the details because she told me she would kill me if I did. So, but I will tell you that they are working extremely hard on the proposal. They're trying to figure out how much of the money that we're asking for that they can get. And I will tell you, they are still pushing towards a July 1st deadline. And I can attest to that because she came home on Sunday night at 8:30 and was excited because that was an early evening for her. They're working, she's literally working about 80 hours a week and has been for the last month and a half in negotiations. So at least I'm happy to share that with you on the side as we go through. But that's not what I'm here to talk about today. I'm here to talk about a way that we can potentially partner with you on development of a new strategic dynamic plan for you here.
Carl, the clicker is giving me some trouble, so I have no problem.
Okay, beep. There we go. I hope you have had a chance to kind of go through the full detail in the proposal, because I promised I didn't want to just read the proposal back to you. But the 4 people that would be associated with this project with you would be me, would be Rich Macheski, who is actually a superintendent in Troy and has been working with Hewlings and Associates on the side as a consultant for strategy development. Ben Lewikowski, who is actually more on the training side, and so the 2 primary people on this project are going to be me and going to be Rich, and then Ben is going to tag along and explore, and then if in the process of developing this plan, you see that you need training, then that's where he would take over if ideas there. And then David Hewlings, I think I put him down there as sage. So essentially, he and I have talked at the beginning of this project, and I like to have a person in the project who isn't in the weeds with us. And it's nice as we kind of go through particular points to say, look at this, is this making sense? Do you have any questions? Are there any things you think we should think about? So in this particular process, he will be engaged when I feel like we need to run something by him to have him look at that. And in terms of the way we've structured our cost to you, is everything is set on an hourly basis. All the hourly costs are the same. And I tried to be very conservative in terms of the number of hours that I think I'm anticipating we'll need for each step, because what I don't want to do is sit down with you and get started and then halfway through say, oh, we're running out of hours. So I anticipate will actually be lower than the projected cost that we showed you, but I wanted to kind of start with more of a worst-case scenario. Okay, beep. Here we go. So let's talk about the first step. The first step is really your community conversations, and this is the first step that I will be guiding. I'll be the primary person here, and that's because Emicity is primarily a market research and strategy firm over in Troy. So this is something that we do all the time for different districts, and we also do for industry. We do for other nonprofits. And the first step to doing a good strategic plan is really getting some very solid community conversations going. So we identified 5 different stakeholder groups that we think you should talk to, and these are typically the groups that we speak to when we go into a district to do this. So staff is critical. We can handle that with a web-based survey. We can program the survey. You'll do the blast out with an invitation, and we'll collect the data and summarize it for you. Parents. The nice thing about the parent survey is we don't need a sample. We present that as a census. So it allows, if anyone says to you, I never had a chance to weigh in on this particular project, the idea here is every parent will have an ability to weigh in at some level in terms of the development of the plan. So we want to explore reactions from parents from pre-K through 12. We're anticipating 600, 800 completes. It's really a guess. Depends on the community and how engaged they are. Could be more, could be less. We will then coordinate with local preschools and support agencies to recruiting to 2 web-based 75-minute focus groups. So essentially what I'd like to do is I want to talk to parents whose kids have not touched the district yet. So kids who are from birth to age, parents with kids age birth to age 3, to understand what are they anticipating in terms of that experience within the educational system, what are the things that are going to be important to them. And that allows us to get just a new voice in there to understand, are there any emerging issues that maybe we're not hearing from our current parents that may become more important to the next generation of parents coming in. From a student perspective, this is probably the part I love to do the most, which is going into classrooms and running 30-minute discussions and talking to kids about what do they value in their education, what do they hope to gain before they leave the district, what are some of the highlights of experiences they've had up until this date. And you may think that a small lower elementary student, for instance, won't have a lot to share. And the answer is they're amazing. These conversations are absolutely amazing. The kids can talk about what matters to them. They can talk about what they hope to gain before they leave. They can talk about what they want to be prepared for. And that allows us then to actually understand 2 things. One is checking to see if typically I get very consistent goals as we move up. They're just a little bit more directed. The other thing, though, is to explore where are we doing a good job now. One of the things I see repeatedly is that when you ask kids to talk about, tell me about a seminal moment where you feel like you really learned something or stepped up, tell me about a project that really got your brain juice flowing, right? It's fascinating to me and a little bit sad that the older the student is, the less likely they are to be able to mention a recent project that's done that for them. And typically by the time you get to the end of high school, they're looking at you going, I'm just burned out, I don't know. But when you challenge them to say, well, you can go K through 12, it doesn't matter, they will move to a middle school project or an elementary school project. So they will talk about, when you talk about, well, why is that seminal? Why do you get excited about it? The fascinating thing to me is that it doesn't matter if you're 8 or 18, that you're going to hear very common themes around what they want. And I want to be able to collect that systematically and then bring that back to you. So that as you're sitting here thinking about where can we grow as a district, where are our strengths as a district, what are the challenges that we're facing, you have that voice of the student in that process as you go through and develop the plan. So that is one of my favorite aspects of doing a plan like this. And then the other thing is I would love to, we'll have to look and see how strong your databases are for recent graduates, but any graduates that are 1 to 5 years out, it's very helpful if we can do a web survey with them because they've taken what you've provided and now they've tried to apply it either to college or to the work world. And it's valuable to understand from their perspective, in retrospect, where did Ferndale really help you? And where could Ferndale have done a better job to prepare you to get to where you are now or where you want to be as you go? So that one is really going to be dependent on the quality of the database, but it's worth trying every time. And what I find is that even if you don't have a huge sample there, it is a unique perspective that you want to pull in and capture. Okay, fourth column up there, no kid households. Particularly in Ferndale, if you think about your population, you know you've got a relatively small proportion of the population that has a student in the district. You have a lot of young professionals that are pre-kid, a lot of young and middle-aged professionals who are just no kid, right? And then you have your empty nesters that are here as well. And I know within Troy and with every district I've worked with so far, oftentimes those populations are the hardest ones for us to understand. We usually get a pretty good handle on our parent populations, but then we say, okay, we need to understand the broader community, because if we're going to ask for a millage or a bond, we have to make sure that they see the value in what we're providing. So it's very important before you start building your plan to understand what it is the general community is looking for you to provide as a district. So what I'm suggesting that we do there is that I'm going to explore, and I'll work with your team here to kind of identify what are some of the community groups where we think we could tap in and go talk to them. So if you have, like for instance in Troy, we have a senior group, and we have a liaison from the board that goes to the senior group to talk to the senior citizens about things. And if you have a group similar to that, then you'd send me there. And then at one of their general gatherings, I would run a whole conversation and understand from their perspective what's important to them from the educational system. So that we have budget in there to do 3 focus groups. So what I would do is really look at what my alternatives are, and then sit down with the crew here and say, all right, these are 6 different places we could go. I'm thinking maybe we do 1, 4, and 5. Those are the 3 that make sense to me, but we'll get agreement and then we'll head out and do that. Then the last thing is employers. I've heard you have a good relationship with your Chamber of Commerce. And so what we're recommending there is that we coordinate with the Chamber of Commerce to basically take over one of their meetings. So to come in as a outside spokesperson and run a conversation with the people who are at the meeting. One of the things that Camille and I talked about last week when we were talking about this particular piece is I would work with your chamber to make sure that we had some advanced publicity around, hey, if you don't normally come to a chamber meeting, come to this meeting, because this is a chance for you as a chamber member, as a member of the commerce area of Ferndale, to really have your voice heard. So that would be the fifth piece. So once we have all those conversations and surveys completed, we would put together a full analysis for you and sit down and walk through what are kind of my goal is always to bubble it up, to say, all right, I'm not going to give you 300 charts. I'm going to talk to you about what commonalities we saw across the groups, and what are the key desires and needs of your general community that you want to then think about before you sit down as a group and start building your strategic plan. So it's really a nice foundation to start your own internal conversations. And as you build an internal strategic plan group, the idea is that when you sit down even the first meeting to start walking through what are some of the central tenets of that plan going to look like, to start with the summary of this so that everybody is sitting there going, okay, I get it. It's not what I want, it's what does the community need. Let's make sure we build a plan around that. So that's the first step. After that then, beep. Oh, sorry, you're gonna have to go through my animation. That was so clever, yeah. Sorry, it would have been really good if the clicker worked, so, okay. Okay, so after you've done that, then we move into step 2 with the synthesis, adoption, and dissemination. So I want to establish, there's a very specific operating premise that I want you to really think about here, and that is, we're going to assist you, but we're not going to build this plan, right? You're going to build this plan. We're going to help you build the plan, because if we build it as outsiders, it's not your plan. And then when you turn to try to gain buy-in from the rest of the organization, they're going to also see that as not your plan. And therefore, it's going to be much harder to get somebody to buy in. So our goal is to really guide you along. If you get stuck someplace, to unstick you and move you forward, to facilitate meetings so that you have an ability to participate yourself, so you're not trying to facilitate and participate, and then to answer questions, to be able to share ideas that we've heard from other districts that may be similar to something you're asking about. And that's really our focus as we go through here, is to make sure that you're moving along, making progress. The other thing that, and I know from being in your seat, Sometimes it's hard because you don't have enough bandwidth to get some things done. So when you talk about things like summarizing a discussion, or taking all the notes that are on 1,000 chart pads and distilling it down and bringing it back to you, that's where I can help, because I can take all that, clean it up, and then push it back to you so that doesn't fall on any of you. And then it gives you an ability to look at that summary and react to it. It's much easier to play editor than creator when you're doing this kind of stuff. Okay, beep, we'll go to the next one. Our goals and outcomes. So basically, once we've shared all the conversations with you about what we learned in the community, we will put them together into a SWOT-style analysis, so you understand strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and coordinate with your dynamic planning committee internally that you create to really develop and prioritize the key elements of your 5-year plan. So you kind of start with your central tenets, and then you start distilling down from there. Something that I want you to think about is, and no, you know what, I'll talk about that in the next slide as we go through. I will tell you the conversations are going to be lively. We just finished coming from a district down in Ohio 2 weeks ago, and we went for 6 straight hours with a team that was just on it. I walked out of there energized after 6 hours, which is amazing. We did take a break for lunch, but I will tell you that once people realize that this is our plan and we're going to build it together, you're going to get a lot of buy-in and a lot of enthusiasm. Okay, last one on this one. So one of the things that as a facilitator, and I'm a professional focus group moderator as well, so this is the thing I have to do for any client, any company that hires me, is that we want to make sure that we hear from all the voices in the room, right? So my goal as an outside person coming into this is to make sure that all the voices in the room are being heard, and to identify people who may be quiet or may be hesitant to speak up because they may be looking at the power structure in the room and decide, I'm not at the top of this power structure, and I disagree with someone who I see is higher up in the power hierarchy than me. So it's our job as facilitators to be challenging people to speak up, to be able to make sure we're capturing those ideas. If we have conflicting ideas, to work those out as a team, to say, okay, we can either go this way or this way. Let's kind of talk about what are the pros and cons of doing either of those, and then getting agreement from the group in terms of what to do. And I will tell you that there is magic in that planning committee. It just is. What happens is the planning committee becomes unified. Once they're unified and they I always call it, is your baby beautiful, right? When they look at the baby and say, this is a beautiful baby, they're going to turn around then and sell that to the broader organization. And one of the keys to being successful with a strategic plan is making sure that you have broad buy-in. If the strategic plan is working, anybody in your organization should be able to speak to the central tenets of that plan at any given point. And that's the goal. I will tell you, we're on our second dynamic strategic plan in Troy, and it guided us through COVID. It has allowed us to stay on track in times of crisis. It also allows us, in an environment where we're always struggling for finances, to be able to say, we're going to have to do a few things really well, and that means we're going to have to give up some things. And when you're trying to figure out how to balance that budget game, having a dynamic plan allows you to say, is this purchase or this expense in line with our 5-year goal? And if it's not, then it becomes an argument for saying, then we need to let go of that, even though it might be good, because these other things over here are in alignment with that strategic plan. Okay. So we'll go to the next one. So a few questions that Camille said might come up tonight. So what makes a strategic plan dynamic? There's a couple of things that are really key to it. The first thing is that it is a limited focus. By limited focus, I mean you should be able to put your central tenets on one piece of paper. Because if you have 1,000 things in your strategic plan, if everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. And you're not going to be able, the other thing is that it's going to become a very thick, dusty binder that goes onto a shelf and doesn't get accessed. You need to be able to have something that people can speak to. So that's the first thing. The other thing is that it's adjustable, it's living. You're going to continually go back to it. And for instance, in Troy, we have quarterly updates on strategic plan advancement. So we go through all of our central tenets and we talk about what have we done, what are the glide paths in the last quarter, where are we getting challenged, what are our roadblocks, what can we do? Sometimes that means you're going to look at that plan and you're going to say, I need to make some adjustments, right? So it's what you establish at the very beginning. Rich Bachesky likes to say, don't fall in love with your plan. You have to recognize the plan as a working document. And if you fall in love with your plan and then you find you're not able to achieve something, it starts falling apart. The goal is to be able to look and say, all right, we need to tweak this a little bit, or we're not going to get to where we want to go, or maybe we need to resolve it. So that's the dynamic part of the plan, is that because you're looking at it, you're making decisions against it all the time, you're going to set key metrics that you're going to use to measure progress against the plan, and you're going to look at those metrics on a regular basis and adjust if you need to. It becomes a living document. It becomes a really valuable guidepost for you. And then the other thing is I will tell you, you could go, I'll give you an example in Troy. If you go to any of our 24 buildings, when you walk into the building, there are placards on the wall with the 4 central tenets of our strategic plan. Parents know what they are. Every building sees what they are. We have flags at central office as you drive in. You don't go into Troy without knowing what those pillars are. And the value in that is that in conversations at your table here, you will begin to speak about things you're talking about in terms of the way those things relate to your strategic pillars. And in doing that, it allows you as a group to be able to focus, to say, are we on track or are we losing track? Are we in the weeds? Are we thinking strategically as a board? Okay, that was a really long answer. I'm sorry. Okay, so next question. Why do we need to use an outside facilitator? The answer is you don't. You don't have to, but there are some advantages to doing that, okay? The first one is, and I think it's a key advantage, and I'm talking about myself here, but having a professional market researcher do all your research is really valuable. We have the analytical tools, we have the experience, we know how to structure surveys, we have the software so we can design dynamic surveys that are interesting for people to take, that have branching and advanced logic in it, so you can ask people questions based on how they answered previous questions. We have SPSS in our office, so we'll run statistical analysis on it. So things like that are extremely valuable. We have the tools is what we do every day. If you try to do a Microsoft form and do a survey with your parents that way, you're going to have a low response rate, and you're probably not going to be able to have as a dynamic conversation with them as what we can provide. Okay, so that's the first advantage. The second one is we have experience in creating these documents and working with other districts and have identified things that work. Right? So if we see something that we think might be problematic in terms of as you start building that out and talking about what your goals are, we have an ability to hold a mirror up for you and say, are you sure that's what you want to do? Here's something that you might want to think about, before you take that route. The other thing is objective moderation. Objective moderation really reduces that. Well, I talked about that already, about organizational or hierarchical friction. If we have Camille running these groups, she's in a bad position. Right? Because now it's like suddenly, okay, the boss is asking me what I should do. I'm going to do whatever the boss tells me she wants me to do. The other thing is, and I think this is as valuable, is that I would like you to participate. I would like you to be a participant in this process. And Sandra, you probably recognize this when you're running the board meeting. Sometimes you're not being a trustee. You're coordinating the meeting. What I want is I want to be able to coordinate the meetings so that all of you can participate, or some subset of you will be able to participate in those conversations. So that's another advantage of bringing an outside firm in. Okay, and the last thing is, there was a question posed, do we understand Ferndale community dynamics? I think Ferndale's a fascinating city. My daughter lives literally 2 blocks from here in Ferndale. But I want to go back and say, as the market researcher in the room, there's a better question that I want you to ask. And that is, does the research component incorporate Ferndale community dynamics, right? It doesn't matter whether I understand community dynamics here. What matters is we collect the data in a way that represents your community dynamics. Because I'm going to lean on the data, not my own opinions about Ferndale. I'm going to tell you what your city is telling me that's important to them, right? And that's the most important thing. And that's why I think the research stage is really critical. It really creates a good foundation for you to go through. But to answer the original question, yes. Hewlings and Associates has worked with Ypsilanti, Willow Run, Warren Woods, Wayne Westland, Orchard View, and Oak Ridge are both near urban, suburban districts outside of Muskegon. So when David and I talked, and I said, yeah, all of these are really great examples of school districts that I think probably encounter a lot of the dynamics that you encounter based on where you are geographically. Okay? All right. Beep. Okay, so timetable. We've laid out a timetable based on what we were asked to do. We think we can go probably a month faster than this if things move along. But essentially, I won't read everything out here, but in July and August, what we're going to do is we're going to queue up for September. So the first thing we'll do is any community conversations that I can get done during the summer months, I'll get those done for you. Anything that doesn't rely on everybody being in seat back here. So like the commerce and the daycare groups, things like that, anything that's not dependent on the school schedule, I want to get out of the way, just so that we've captured that. Then the other thing we want to do is we want to build all of our topic guides, all of our questionnaires we'll build over the summer. We'll get them programmed and ready to go so that then we'll just figure out which date we want to launch. So you get the kids back in seat, you got all your employees back in seat, and then we start setting a cadence to launching all this research as we go through. So probably the qualitative discussions with the kids, I'd probably want to wait 2 or 3 weeks past the start of school and then come into the classrooms and talk to kids that way. So that's really collection of data and creation of those instruments is July, August, September. End of September through early October, it's going to be pulling all the data down, analyzing all the data, putting it all together, and being able to take it back to your planning group and being able to show your planning group, these are the key things that we found. Give the planning group a chance to ask us questions, to clarify, to make sure that we've expressed what we need. If there's gaps they want to understand that we didn't include in the summer, we'll go back and clean that up, get it ready. And then by November, we want to share that out with the Board of Education. And then at that point, if the Board of Education says, thumbs up, we got a good handle on the community, let's get going, then right after that approval, then we'll start meeting with the Dynamic Planning Committee to actually start building the plan. So we would anticipate getting the plan built by December, really, have that cleaned up before you break for winter break, and then finalize everything in early January, present the first draft to the board by the end of January, and this is a chance for you as a board to be able to say, thumbs up, thumbs down, tweak it this way or that way, we'll get it all cleaned up and then bring it back to you in February for formal approval. And then after that, it's time to disseminate, then the real fun begins, right? Thinking about how do we make sure that the community understands strategically what Ferndale Public Schools is all about. I think that's it. Yep, there we go. If anyone's still awake, are there any? I told you I understand where you're at, where you're coming from. Okay, so are there any questions for me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Felicia looked at me. I feel typecast.
I appreciate the.
Oh, no, go ahead,
worry
go ahead, it's
about
fine.
me, like, I
saw the
Hands were like,
notepad. I saw the notepad.
Carl, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate your presentation. Just a couple of questions. One, the feedback from the various stakeholders feels very web-based.
No, it's about half qualitative and half quantitative. In some cases, it's in person. In some cases, it's going to be Zoom-based qualitative. So I'll be running the conversation. It'll be in person, but it'll just be remote, so it's more convenient. And then for your larger populations where I think to be able to demonstrate that you offered a census opportunity for certain populations, your staff. One of the things that staff get really worked up about is, well, who got to weigh in on this plan, right? No one asked me anything about this. And the idea is say, oh no, every single staff member in the district has an ability to weigh in. So that's why that's quantitative. Parents, same thing. If you feel that you would want some more qualitative with the parents, you can. I could incorporate that in. But the idea is to offer an opportunity to weigh in for all the parents. The other thing I should tell you is that the parent surveys that I've done are typically, I do provide a number of open-ended questions for people to actually write paragraphs and tell me what they think. And then we won't hand code them because your costs are going to go up. But I've got several AI programs that will do a really good job of summarizing the key themes in the comments that people gave, and then can actually pull example verbatim so we can kind of see, what do they mean by that. So there's a lot of qualitative. And then the students is all qualitative.
Yeah, I should have been more clear. I was looking for the qualitative for the staff and the parents.
Okay.
So thank you for that clarification. And then with the surveys, is there a phone interface? Like, this is something somebody can do on a mobile device?
It is set, it's not, yes, they're optimized for mobile devices. It's a visual survey.
Yeah.
But we know, just in general in market research now, about 55% of all surveys are done on mobile devices. So we always optimize our surveys for mobile. But someone can click on the link from a tablet, from a phone, or from a computer, and it takes you to the same survey.
And then just help me understand the timeline of your plan. The timeline felt very aggressive, and is that because that's what the RFP asked you to do?
No, we could even move faster than this. It's really the appetite, it's your appetite to move quickly. One of the things that we find with building strategic plans is the more time you give the group, the more the group gets bogged down. The reality is we're not going to create a 2-inch thick binder on this. We're going to create something that's more mobile and more visual and more dynamic. And you will quickly get to the central tenets, and then you can start building action plans underneath each of those tenets as you go. But when I laid out this timetable with Rich, and he looked at it and he said, yeah, I agree with you. We could probably shave a month off if we wanted to. But what I did like about that is I know, again, being on a board, that the agendas in the fall are usually pretty heavy. And so I was trying to figure out, that's why I had it in January if you look at the touch points, I was basically projecting when I felt like if you did this to me and Troy, we probably have a better shot at getting this done. So what I could tell you is we can probably go a little bit faster, but I think actually, Camille, I think your RFP had us done by March. And I think I said, we don't need to go to March. Let's try to, but what I wanted to do is be able to have this, I want to be able to be out of your hair by the end of February so that you can spend the rest of the year really laying out your advanced plans. And then my thought would be you may want to launch this, if you have a huge kickoff in the fall, that may be a time to really launch it to the whole community. Or just figure out other ways of disseminating it more broadly. But it gives you a couple months there to go from your planning team, your planning committee, to a broader group of people who start actually building the pieces, and then it gives you the spring to kind of work that out before you break for summer.
And if we were to shave off, February would align with our state of the district. So just thinking about like if we were done earlier, it could be an opportunity at State of the District to roll out some of
The squeeze.
I wasn't suggesting a shorter time.
No, I know.
I was trying to figure
Gotcha.
out, especially for a plan that, as you have talked about, your facilitators and guides, but not authors, so the group that is representative of the district becomes the authors. So I'm trying to figure out who is that group, and then how do you work out a calendar with them that fits into a quite aggressive calendar here? So just trying to get clarity on what the expectations would be.
Typically, for your initial document, you should be able to, the internal team should be able to pull this together with, I would say, typically 4 meetings. Like, you don't want to meet 42 times. You're just going to burn everybody out. And that's enough to lay out the key structure. Like, we'll literally, your central tenets, 3 to 5 central tenets, will be laid out in the first meeting. By the time the planning group leaves the first meeting, they'll have a draft of those 5 things. Because you'll begin to start understanding, as we start talking about what are the demands and desires of the community, those will naturally start laddering into buckets, and it usually those buckets start appearing pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm. And I'll just add to that, I would just say that being without a strategic dynamic plan is not an ideal state. So I will say that from an educator perspective, we're like, please, can we get one? So we would, it is the priority with me as, facilitating the team here for the district, that it's a priority. So that's one point I wanted to make. Also, looking at our newly adopted calendar, we were very intentional about building in day-to-days and opportunities for us to take a pause, review data, and make informed adjustments. So without what those days could be used for, or they could be days with the dynamic plan committee.
Okay.
Which is what we would use those days leading up to, if we were to go with this timeline, we would use those days for that. Also, we can adjust as well, but it would be very ideal. I just would double down on what Carl is mentioning about the utilization of the summer months as being an asset to us.
Yeah, Warren County, which is the place in Ohio we were at, I put together an aggressive timetable to get started with them last spring, and they could not approve it until the fall. And it pushed us 6 weeks behind because I want the summer months, because the summer months will give me a chance to when I have availability of your people here, when they're not crazy trying to get the start of the year going, it's a chance for them to be able to think about the questionnaires, read them through, make tweaks. It's a nice quiet time for that setup. So, yeah, it would help us immensely if you were to make a decision that allowed us to work during the summer on it.
Who's on the development committee, planning team, whatever terminology you want to use? Who is that?
From the district team, or from
Overall?
Who's the dynamic planning committee?
We are awaiting the approval of the Board of Education to begin that solicitation.
So I guess
I think it's like,
Yeah.
who would we solicit from?
So I think what the part that has not been mentioned, and we got new folks in the room, newer, right? Like, our strategic plan is typically a lot of community involvement, a ton, like outside of the staff. And I think this planning sounds like it's a different shift of who's actually carrying the brunt of the work.
Right. You seek input from everyone at the beginning, but then you have a limited group of people that actually build the plan. That's right. So everybody, the voice that people, and it was interesting, Warren County, using an example because we just came from there. When I went through the results and explained everything, I had a couple of staffers that said, a couple instructors that said, well, I feel like we should let the other teachers weigh in on this conversation we're having. And I said, that was that survey of all staff. You know, that they did weigh in. Like, the idea is to point to the research and say, everybody had a voice in this, and now you have a limited group that can think about it and go through. But to that end, you do want to carefully think about the types of people who are represented there. And I would suggest that you invite people who maybe invite some people that you know that are powerhouses, right, in this kind of stuff, but identify some folks that typically aren't engaged in this kind of thing to make sure that you've got an interesting mix of people who are sitting at that table and starting to weigh in on this, because you will get interesting perspectives as you carefully look at the positions. But what I would do is if you build the committee, I would suggest you identify the members by position type first, right? And as opposed to the people you want. It's like, okay, what positions should be represented in this conversation? And then within each position, then you talk about, okay, who would be a good person from that group? But make sure that you have a very representative group that's helping you with it.
So I have a question. Sorry, is yours
Mine's related to
piggybacking
the
off of
same
this
thing.
immediately?
Yeah, that's all right.
Go
You're
ahead.
right.
Go ahead.
So like typical group, because again, like I was on the prior one and we had, what, a parent and a staff member at least from every single school, I think at that point. And so it was a bigger group. How
Right.
many people are you thinking are involved?
Yeah, I would not put a parent in the group. The parents, the role of the parents is to provide input at the beginning in the research phase. This is a chance then for you as an internal group to sit down and say, what do we want to accomplish based on, and how are we going to accomplish it based on what the community told us they wanted, right? So the difference is you don't start with, the group doesn't bubble up the priorities of the community already gave you the priorities, so now you think about how can we actualize against those priorities. So the short answer to your question is I would say 20 or less. It's not a huge group.
And so you're saying those people would be
Employees.
employees within the district?
Employees.
Okay.
And I would say if you want to have, I would say no more than 2 trustees. And typically, the trustees are not part of this conversation. It's a chance for, although it's fine if you want to be part of it. I mean, you've got, obviously you can't have more than 3, so on it. But if you want to have a couple, but I wouldn't overweight it with trustees. The idea is that you will see the research, you'll understand the goals, you then act as master editors against the plan, right? So you will have seen me come in and talk you through all the research. Now, the first time that the draft of the report that comes, or the draft of the plan that comes in front of you, guess how you're going to evaluate the quality of that plan? You've seen the research. So then you're looking and say, does this plan address the needs that the community research told us that we needed to have? So you play editor, you're master editor on that, and make sure that in the end, you feel it's providing what you want. That's why I have in the timetable, the assumption here is that there's going to be editing after a review with you every time. Because you're going to have your priorities and you're going to be able to speak to it. But the idea is to keep you out of the weeds, to allow the group to get together and build this, and then come back to you and give you a chance to edit.
So Carl,
May I? So, yeah, this amplifies my original question.
Okay.
If we are having a smaller committee with no parent representation, I know we can talk about all this, ultimately we get to decide, right? Parent-student representation and such. But I'm extra curious then why you don't do focus groups with the staff in addition to the survey? Or with in-district parents in addition to the surveys,
Sure.
and no surveys for the students? It feels like we're missing out on
Money.
just the
I'm trying
sustainability.
to provide this in a cost-effective way for you. I mean, but here's what I will tell you. The conversations that the parent surveys that we've had have been very effective at showing and quantifying what's critical. So we will lay out priorities for parents and have them, we'll do a card sort within the survey where they have to prioritize the things that matter to them and what they want their kids to get out of it. I come out of here and I can actually project what parents are asking for. If I just do qualitative, that's bubbling up ideas, but it doesn't give you the sense of what's the bulk of my parent population asking for. So the value of the quantitative is projectable. That's the value. If we do I always offer this up, if we do the quantitative and we see, I'll call it unresolved conclusions, we see things going on in the data and we're not sure what it means, we can easily add some focus groups for you. Right? It's not factored into this budget, but I can add a focus group or 2 if we want to dig a little further into some of that. The other thing, by starting with quantitative, we have an ability, and we always do at the end of our quantitative surveys when we do this with the community, is we say, sometimes we follow up with people with their questions. Is it okay if we follow up with you, yes or no? If yes, give me your email address and I'll follow up with you. And so it allows us to very quickly, we could actually build focus groups among parents who answered with a particular pattern in the quantitative survey. So you can sort of a priori group people together who have similar concerns or similar priorities to be able to talk to them, and then have another group over here with a set of parents that has a different set of priorities, right? So you can, and then we can compare and contrast the 2 groups as we look at it, right? So we can do that with parents. We can also do that with staff. If we do staff, typically what happens is my administrators look at the results from the staff, and it's usually no surprise. It just sort of confirms what they already thought. So, but if you look and go, this has hit me, suddenly it's like I have high distrust in the administration, and you think I thought I had really good employee relations, we can identify people who say, I don't trust you, and say, okay, Carl, go talk to those people and find out what they're really upset about. So we can always add these little components if we need to do it. But what I don't want to do is, I didn't want to bake that into the budget because typically we don't need it. Okay. But it's absolutely available if we think we need to do it.
I guess a follow-up to that would, knowing that we are a community that has done this a few times now where people are very used to being part of that whole process.
Right.
What additional supports are you helping with the facilitation in that beginning to make sure it's communicated very clearly, as a board member? So
right.
Then when this is coming up in our meetings, we're not then getting
Sure.
that comment and that legitimate concern about
Well-
people who feel like they
well,
missed the boat.
Yeah, one of the things that we do, and like, I will give you some statistics to speak to. For instance, in the case of Vicksburg Community Schools that we did last year, they came back and I added up all of the community members that weighed in. And so we say we're starting to build as you begin to present the strategic plan, for instance, you can say the foundation of this plan was input from 2,600 members of our community, right? The value of doing formal research is you really are better representing the community than if you grab a couple of parents who always participate in PTO and do everything and bring them in for this conversation. You're handpicking those people. You're not actually reaching out to the broader community. By starting with the research as a foundation, that's the way you explain to everybody else. It's like, we have our marching orders, now it's our job to go figure out a plan that's going to deliver against those marching orders. But the community gave me the marching orders. 3,000 people from the community told me what I need to do. And that puts you in a much stronger position than to say, I had 4 parents on the planning committee.
I hear you, and I just want to put this a little plug and then let some of my colleagues weigh in. But for a community that's used to giving the marching orders and being part of the march as well, knowing how we would address that.
Well, I mean, ultimately, who's on that planning committee is up to you. I think because you're trying to operate, the planning committee is trying to operate it's trying to prioritize and then operationalize the priorities of the community. And I think that should be in the hands of educational experts.
Yeah, oh yeah, not disagreeing, but.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying. I think there's an optics thing that we need to be careful of, especially because if in the past this is how you've done it, we can start from the very beginning and say, we want it to take a much more systematic view of our community before we got started this time. And so we're doing this a little bit differently, but the advantage of it is that we're able to get a much broader view of the community's perspective by doing it this way.
I just want to highlight something from the last time we did this. It's not very different than what we did the last time, because the last time, all of the stuff that you're proposing to do, like research-based, is the stuff that we did in person. The admin actually built the plan. We just did all of that other, get the priority, set the goal, like set the tenants. We did all that stuff in person. And I think this is taking out that piece, because the part of the committee where the parents were involved was really like setting the tenets of the plan. The admin actually built the plan. So it's gonna feel different, but
Right.
it's actually the same thing.
Yeah, it's going to feel different, it's going to look different, people are going to think it's different. So just incumbent on us and our facilitator, I would argue, to make clear how we are still prioritizing input and legitimately getting it.
There's one flip that we could do, and we've done it before, and it really depends on the board. In Warren County was one that we flipped this. We presented to the board all of the research findings first, and then we had an offsite with the board, and the board then, based on everything they heard in the conversations and the surveys, generated all of the key things that they thought should be incorporated into the strategic plan. We took all of their comments, and then Rich and I sat down and distilled that down and organized it and identified pillars. Sent it back to the board. The board looked at it and made a couple tweaks and said, okay, it's good. That looks like us. It looks like you've captured what we want. And then when the planning committee met for the first time, we've started that with an overview of the research and then showed them what the Board of Education said was important to them and allowed them to sort of build from those pillars. So if you want, but that's more time consuming for you. If you want to do that and start that way, it's absolutely a good way to work. One of the things that I noticed with Warren County is that the employees were like, wow, the board's actually thinking about this. Like, oh, this is kind of cool. They're kind of laying the pathway for us, and now we're going to sit down. And it was fascinating to watch them, because that district is a more rural district. And there were words that were very, I'm going to call it Troy-like because that's where I live, but it was, suburban Detroit words, and they're like, yeah, we don't talk like that. So we start changing language, and it was a couple of minor tweaks as you went through, but when you were done, you're like, oh yeah, it feels like the place I'm at. It feels like the community that I had been surveying. So so if you want to be involved in that, we can rearrange this timetable, and basically you would get it before the committee does, and then the committee would work from there. It's absolutely a legitimate way to do this.
You know I've got more, I know
Yeah.
you probably do.
got a
Mine is,
few
I think,
too.
going out with Peter's, like,
I got
as someone who was on it before, I can totally understand the reason for doing only staff on that committee. I can understand it because I think, like, part of the reason why you're saying go with this is you need the staff to be the ones that fully agree with what the strategic plan is in order to push it forward and make sure that we do everything we said.
Yeah, it's really
But I
they're
feel
the
like
ones who are going to
when-
operationalize it, right?
Right, I feel like
So-
when we made our strategic plan before, there was so many things that were in it, and it was very hard to take all of those different items and then break
Yeah.
them out to like every school and how do they implement them. So I can understand this better from it. I think what mine is more a concern is I feel like we tend to have issues with when we do web-based surveys of not necessarily touching everyone within the community. Like we're Ferndale School District, but we're not the city of Ferndale.
Right, and I'm not talking
And
to,
so I'm just, mine is like, when we do the survey, is there a way for us, when you say like, we got, 600 surveys back from our community, to know that we got X amount from Ferndale, X amount from Oil Oak Township, X amount from the different areas, so we know,
Where we might need to.
yes, is there an area that we are not getting feedback from, to know that we are encompassing our entire district?
are you talking parents? Because the parents is the survey, the
I'm talking
external.
whether it's parents or community.
Well, if we go back to the research page, we're not doing a survey we don't have easy access to do a survey with non-parents. We do have an ability, if you wanted to, we would have to do, I'm going to call it an unscientific survey, but we could post through the public library, we could post a link, we could put it on the social media pages for the district with a link to the survey. But you can't prevent ballot stuffing, you can't predict who's going onto that survey. But if that's something you feel like we want to be able to provide an avenue for anyone in the community to be able to answer a basic question about priorities, we can build that for you.
The main concern, I think, is going to be parents within the community.
Right, but see, parents, we have an email list. So we will send a census survey to every parent in the district. So no matter where they are in the communities, if they have a kid in here, they're going to get a survey invitation.
Yep, we
Right,
do that already, and we don't get that. That's what I'm saying, like,
Right.
we already do that, and we don't get the feedback necessarily.
understand.
So it's wanting to make, that's mine of like,
Part
big
of,
thing is making sure we're representing
Yeah.
everybody. And not
Part-
just the loudest people that always do, because they will respond. It's how do we get the rest of our district that we don't?
and I'm going to say this because I see it happen in Troy all the time, and that is the surveys that typically go out of the district are not professional surveys. The introductions are not good. We don't motivate people to complete the survey. The questions are not written well. This is my profession, so I'm just going to speak to it. And again, even as a member of the board in Troy, sometimes I'm like, oh, can't believe we sent that to our parents. That's terrible, right? And it's typically a Microsoft form. Like when you do a survey, what software are you using? Is it SurveyMonkey or is it a form? Like what is it? It's probably not a professional survey. It's like we use Voxco survey software. It's Canadian software. It's a fantastic thing that makes everything pretty and I write questions that are engaging, that kind of stuff. So we know what our subject line needs to be. We know what we have to say within the first 3 lines of the email invitation if you're going to turn it on or turn it off right away. So those are things, I do this for a living. So it's not the same. It's not the same as an internal survey. So the other thing is when the results come back, we will be analyzing that survey in statistical software. So I'll be looking at representation through your communities based on I'll know based on the list how many parents live in each of those communities. You'll be able to share that with me in the database. If the database that comes back doesn't match that, we can turn around and heavy up, or even figure out, maybe offer a potential incentive for parents in a given area to respond who haven't responded already. The other thing is that when we do a survey, we always do the primary blast. Then we do a secondary reminder, and then we have a third one. And the language differs on the second one and the third one based on things we know are more likely to get people to comply. So we know, for instance, that typically you will get 50, if you send out your initial blast and you get 200 people, in the second blast you will get another 100 people. Probably not more than that. You buy 50% of that. The third blast then will buy you another 50, another half of that again. So every time you do a reminder, you're going to get half of what you got in the previous blast as you go through. But we also know the timing. How many days do you go before you send that second one? When do you send the third one? So I don't want to say trust me, but it is a different thing.
My biggest one was one, you said it.
Yeah.
You're going to link emails to where they live to be able to tell us. That's my biggest thing. I want to
Yeah.
know that we're,
Well,
I just want to know we're
yeah.
seeing our whole.
And the other thing is that when we do our analysis, we will be looking at the different communities. If we see priorities are different depending on where you are, we'll talk about that so that you begin to understand what those differences are. I mean, one of the things, anything that we have with quantitative data, I'm going to chart it out for you so you can look at where are the patterns, where do we feel we're underperforming, where are we potentially overperforming against what the needs are of the community. So a lot of that quantitative survey is looking at what do you want and what are you getting, right? And then matching those up to say, and we do that so that you can look and say, you might ask 20 different things, and you'll find that the same 4 or 5 come up with every group. Like, oh, look, everybody's talking about, in Warren County, it was creative problem solving. Creative problem solving. That's what the employers wanted. It's what the parents wanted. It's what the staff wanted. It's what the kids wanted. They wanted opportunities to learn how to do creative problem solving. And that showed up no matter who we were talking to. So we came back and said, whatever you do in your strategic plan, where is creative problem solving in there? Because that is a priority for your community, right? So that's the kind of stuff where I can't predict where it's going to go yet, but we'll build a good enough battery of attributes that we'll be able to look at this, and you'll be able to say, all right, they've covered us from soup to nuts here, and from that we can identify these are the 4 things that came up. But I mean, these are great questions that you're asking. I know. I don't mean to. Sometimes I come across as bossy, and it's not. I don't at all. I mean, I'm happy you're asking the questions because you should be thinking about those things. And I guess, and again, I don't want to say trust me, but that's what I think about for a living. Like that to me is looking at the differences. I drive my administration crazy because I'm database, right? So I'm always like, okay, I want to look at that subpopulation. What's going on with that? Okay, that's all fine and dandy. The general number looks good, but show me the subpopulation that isn't working. What are we not doing? How do we change our delivery to that subpopulation so that subpopulation is making it? So I absolutely, I'm right there with you. I know what you're thinking.
I'm very much the same, so
okay.
I appreciate it. I fully appreciate it.
Like I said, this is these conversations get really fun because the other thing is I may come to you and present the data, and then you'll ask me 3 questions about subgroups I didn't think about, and you know what I'm going to say? I don't know. I'll get back to you on that. I'll go back to the data and I'll come back and give you a sense of what's going on there. That's why it's important that we present a draft first and then come back to you and revise based on what you're asking for. The other nice thing is that the database that we have here, even after the plan is written, the database is still there. So you can always call me later on if there's something that comes up that you say, you know what, we asked a question about that in our community survey. I can pull the number for you and tell you what it is. So that's what we do with all our clients. Once the main project is done, we're there as a resource for you as you're trying to bring it to life and make it work.
So,
No, please.
I was about to.
Yep, so my one last higher level, I promise. It goes off of that.
Okay.
Is, you mentioned you have a person on your team, Ben, who you described as a trainer as needed, and I was wondering from a sustainability standpoint, what training is done, knowing this is a dynamic plan, we're gonna the purpose is to be adjusting it as we go.
Right.
I would think from a sustainability standpoint, we'd want to see us be more and more autonomous with those adjustments as we go.
Absolutely.
So how's that baked?
And I mean, so basically, we will you'll develop the plan with us. At some point, we're going to say, fly, good job, go fly, make it work. And but what you're going to need to do, and this is where I think Camille is going to have to look, is you'll probably have, I'm going to tell you right now, because it almost always happens, there's going to be something in there about developing your people in your strategic plan, right? And so that's where the training can come involved, because if you sit down and say, we need to develop our people in these 3 directions, then the question is, do we have the internal expertise to do that? If we don't, then Ben and other folks from Hewlings and Associates, they have very experienced people that can help you develop your people. That's their primary focus. So it's funny because David Hewlings is always like, okay, he sees the front-end work that Rich and I do as sort of laying the ground for, he may get calls from you later on, because once you identify what you need to improve on, then you're going to say, I need help doing that as well. And he's got a full list of professionals he can identify that are good at whatever you need to do, right? That's one of the things he's very good at. That's why I love him. So, but that's a really good question. So Ben, because that's where he comes from, and he hasn't done much in strategic planning, he's literally kind of tagging along. So when we need him and he's doing something autonomous with Rich and me, we will be billing his hours. If he's tagging along and learning, we're only billing for Rich and me. So, and we only bill for who's working, for how many hours they're working. So that was something I wanted to give Camille some assurance on, is that I think in my proposal I said, we're going to monitor this. We know about how, I've got it laid out by month, how many hours I think we're going to take to get this stuff done. If I'm going to check in periodically, and if I look and go, ooh, we're way over, then we will have a conversation about how do we do this? Do we adjust the number of hours to keep the budget where it is? Do we think we need to increase the budget in order to get what we need done? We'll work that out together, but there'll be no surprises.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, yeah.
It's okay, it's okay.
Go ahead.
No.
I'm happy you're engaged. Everybody's awake. That's good.
You talk about the 4 for Troy, or like posted all over, because I'm just on the site, on Troy's. What are the 4 for Troy then? Is like you call your.
The pillars.
Pillars.
The
Thank
4
you.
pillars.
Okay, that's what, I thought you said tentacles, and so I was like, I don't think that's
Tenants.
right.
Tenants are different than
Thank you.
tentacles, yeah.
That's why I was like, I don't think that's right. What are the 4 that you are calling your pillars then?
So we have a gold, red, green, and blue pillar. We actually put colors on them because a lot people will say. So if we look at the green pillar, it's looking at early childhood to career. So it's looking at readiness from early child career. And then underneath that pillar, you want to have no more than typically 3 key things you're going to focus on in the next 5 years. So that's one of the issues when you talked about it's so hard to keep all this in your head. The reality is a human being can only keep maybe 5 things in their head. So if you go beyond that, you're going to lose them anyway. So that's one of them. Another one is our red pillar. Our red pillar is social emotional health and well-being. So we have a whole focus around that as we go through. The gold pillar is deep learning. So we have focus on deep learning. And then the blue pillar is, I'm blanking. I live and breathe this, and I'm like, developing our people. So yeah, it's really fun. We call it building capacity, actually, building capacity. And their first 5-year plan, we called it developing our people, and then we were like, we said really it's about capacity because it's building capacity within the students, it's building capacity within our people in order to execute. And so within each of those then, you'll have 2 or 3 key areas, and then where the planning goes is you still have to say, so if I want to accomplish these 3 things underneath this pillar, what are the limited number of things that we're going to have to do? And that's where the resources come in, right? What are the programs that reinforce this? You just changed from NWEA, right? So you want to look at that and say, did you do that because iReady. Is iReady more consistent with our strategic plan? It's like we literally, all of anything we track, any of our standardized testing, we are changing things. We are very good about eliminating, there's so much noise in standardized testing that we have distilled ourselves down to, there's only a couple of key things that we even monitor. Because we're not a firm believer in strategic planning anyway, or that's wrong. We're not a firm believer in standardized testing because it's kind of antithetical to deep learning. So, but there are some key measures we know we want to look at. And so we tell the community, we're only going to look at these 7 things. So you can look at M-STEP here, here, and here, and here, and you can come and yell at us about it, but we don't care, because we know that it's not valid, it doesn't matter to us. But these things, we're gonna live and die on these things, we're gonna make sure those things work. So that's what I mean about when you get this going and everybody knows, like someone asked at the microphone earlier, asked about restorative practices. So it's very interesting because I've been hounding our secondary assistant superintendent because it's clear to me that we are inconsistent in our delivery of restorative practices. And it really makes me mad because they pretend they know what they're doing, but they're not trained, And so I keep pointing to the red pillar. You're violating the red pillar. We've got to do this because we said this is one of the 4 things that we wanted to make sure that we did. We've got to take care of the social emotional health of our kids. So, the pillar allows me at a governance level to make sure the organization is moving in the direction that we've agreed we're going to move. Does that help in terms? I mean,
No, that does, because I was.
it is extremely powerful once you got everybody understanding the pillars.
Yeah,
It's so powerful at a.
Yes, I was on the website and I couldn't find the strategic
Oh,
plan,
okay.
so that's what I was trying, I was like, you can't be talking about the goals of literacy, math, science, and social studies. So thank you, that
Yeah.
makes me feel much better about it. Not necessarily to you, more sorry to hear. My only concern with timeline is 3 of the 7 will not be here, like, in the middle of this timeline. And so how does that affect, I'm
Yeah.
thinking about 3 new coming in,
Right.
and where do they fall in this process, and how overwhelming this or the other is at coming in and having to all of a sudden approve. Not, I
No, I
100% say,
understand.
yes, we need to get this
I
done.
understand.
Mine, Z, like,
Good
how do we
point.
do that with?
Yeah.
So I can speak to that a little bit because we had a change of 2 board seats kind of in the middle of from moving from our first plan to our second plan. And in fact, we had some people come in year 4 into our 5-year plan and started asking, why can't I change this? And the answer is that the plan supersedes an individual, and that the organization has agreed to what this is. So so that's the first thing is say, okay, you will have a say in the next go around, but your job as a trustee is to reinforce the plan that's already established, right?
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. But you've got 3 potential. So you have 3
Right.
that are retiring in.
Yes, between December and January, we're gonna have a flip. So.
Yeah, so that's my, like, I'm looking at it, go like,
So,
Jen,
yeah,
marry
wait, if the
myself,
plan
like-
is in place, it's one thing,
Right.
but the plan's not gonna be in place according to this timeline.
No. But here's what I would say. I would if they were new on my board, I would want to have them there when we present the findings and build so right now I have it set up so we would be November. See, I
Yeah,
don't
we'll know
I don't want to
November
hamper
who they
Camille either,
are.
though. That's why I'm like, Camille's
Well,
saying,
that's
I
what
need the
mean.
plan.
We'll know in July who's running.
Who's running,
Yeah.
correct.
Which makes.
And we'll know by November for sure who it is.
But if there's not that many running, you just bring them all in.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, the other thing is that, well, there's 2 ways we can handle this. One is we stick with this plan, and when those new people come in, Rich and I will sit down with them, and we'll sort of give them a catch-up session where we walk them through the research. We tell them here's where your board settled. This is what we're in the process of building right now. And you essentially, it's, the scaffolding is up. This is the building. You're going to be able to influence final wording and everything, but you're not going to be able to tear the scaffolding down, So I think if we handle that well, that we could do it that way. The alternative is that instead of going to the board in November, sharing out the community conversation, I would say you stall and share that out in the first workshop in January with your new people.
Well, but if we'll know in November, so that's okay. That's what I'm
Oh.
thinking, forgetting January.
fine.
we'll
No,
flip, but
I'm
we'll
sorry,
know
I
in
wasn't tracking you.
November.
Yes.
So
Yes.
yeah, that'll be, if that's when the biggest thing of like to the board, I think that should be fine. It'd be like,
Yep.
kind of like similar to Peter of like.
Except they won't be
get
able
started
to.
early.
I would
But-
also argue that that's really incumbent upon us to do just to be frank, a better job with this new round of incumbents of us making clear, here's the oath of office. So what's expected of school board trustees in general, because it's not just going through and nitpicking everything. And here's also our expectation in our district. Because then we we can set it up in a way where we're not approaching it from a way of, we gotta protect this before other people
Right.
come in. But more so, which I know is not the intention, but that may be how it comes off. But more, it's, we've laid the foundation, and now we invite you in to help see it through to the end, and this is gonna help, this, to me, that's a great learning opportunity of, here's how the role
Yep.
is. You're taking that input,
Yes.
synthesizing up to the highest level, and seeing out the governance of it, right?
Yeah, if they can be involved there, that makes me feel much more
Yeah,
comfortable. I'm
that's a
thinking
good
of
call. No, that was
as a new person coming in, that's gonna be super overwhelming to be like, catch up and figure this out, so, okay.
And that's, I think that's if for some reason we feel like we need to sort of catch them up on why we did what we did, anything like that, Rich and I will be happy to come in and sit down with them and take them through that so that they feel comfortable with us and with the process at that point. Yeah, that's a challenge. I think you're right. I mean, these are good ways of overcoming it, but yeah, that is, you're changing horses midstream here, so.
It's a good call. So I heard, just from questions and, from the board, 5 areas around feedback, ensuring that they're, understanding the remote in-person surveys, all of that. We also heard, ensuring that we are clear on who the committee members are, and ensuring that all the community is served. A training piece came up, and then ensuring that we're very clear on the timeline, considerate of new board members coming in. What I would like to propose is Carl and I can have like a follow-up discussion, just kind of synthesize a bit what we heard from today's discussion, and maybe prepare a revised proposal
Okay.
based on some of those things that I could share with the board in detail, just based off of some of the feedback that we heard this evening, if that will be okay. Okay.
Much appreciated.
Sorry to ask one more.
Nope.
This will need approval then? So if we need to start, are we gonna have to do a special meeting then at some point?
We're gonna have a special meeting
Yeah, we
anyway
have.
because of contract, so
Oh, okay,
hopefully.
yeah.
we'll
So
be
we
good
would-
about it.
Okay.
We would build
Just
that
wanna make
part.
sure, I
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah,
also
we'll
like,
still-
ooh, if this is July, we need to.
Nope,
yeah,
we're gonna-
okay,
yep.
Awesome.
Yep.
Okay.
So
Are we
we'll-
good? All right.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you. It's
Thank
nice
you
to meet
very
all of you. I
much.
hope we
So
get to
much.
work with you on this. You can
Yes,
tell I get
looking
excited
forward.
about it. It's like, you go like, sure.
He's like, what?
Don't leave your, the thing that didn't work. Thank you, Carl. Right.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
again.
Thank you very
Carl, I'll
much.
shoot you an email this evening.
That brings us to item 7, informational items, budget to actual report.
Hello again.
Hello.
This is the budget to actual report for May. And the first column is first amended budget, but I just want to point out that next month in June, it'll say second amended budget, because that was just approved. We are spending more money in the percent remaining column in May. We are spending more money than last year, but we did have 3 payrolls in May this year, and we only had 2 last year. I wanted to point that out. And we did pay the retention bonus out in May, so do you have any questions?
Thanks, Dawn.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dawn.
Thank you.
7.2, student code of conduct policy review.
Good night, everybody. I'm gonna be concise. I'm Juan Rickman. I'm the Director of Climate and Culture and Athletics of the school district. Back in March, we created our Student Code of Conduct Revision Committee. We established it. Our first order of business was to complete a SWOT analysis, which we did. As determined by the committee, our strengths of the Code of Conduct currently was that the current policy is fairly restorative. There's communication both horizontally and vertically that allows for collaborative efforts between all stakeholders. and potential access to various resources, both within district and external to the district, to further enhance student success is present. As determined by the committee, the weaknesses of our current code of conduct is ambiguous and does not highlight specific intervention, supports, or consequences for our students when code of conduct is violated. Code of conduct does not utilize or coordinate enough resources to provide students with life skills, strategies, and techniques to improve decision-making at all levels. Lastly, code of conduct lacks detail regarding how the district utilizes restorative practices, PBIS, and MTSS at different levels. Opportunities. There are students and school officials working collaboratively to draft a more closely aligned policy that addresses student needs, as we're doing now, trying to make sure that our code of conduct is more preventative and proactive and full of strategies to support student development. Openness to including more student and parent voices, avenues, and various supportive resources. Development of student rewards program with focus on social emotional learning, character education, and leadership. Threats to our code of conduct, district administration, school administration, and staff turnover, which obviously we've incurred over this year. Most of our students are not prepared to manage and handle stressful emotions and situations, which is not an anomaly. We know that because they're kids. Policy is ambiguous and does not guide or support school administration firmly, which potentially puts pressure on administrators to use their own discretion too often. And lastly, students do not see correlation between decision-making in school versus within society and the consequences of their decision-making. After our SWOT analysis was completed, we issued a survey out to various stakeholders. We focused on the 4 components, which was intervention, support, processes, infractions, and language, and asked for their feedback with the questions listed. Common responses: low level of accountability for stakeholders that fail to adhere to code of conduct. Code of conduct is treated as a suggestion rather than a standard or expectation. Specific policy interventions and support for specific offenses, namely attendance, fighting, physically hitting other students, and a cell phone. Third, clear and comprehensive expectations, consequences, or plan of action for the district addressing misbehavior or supporting students. Behavior matrix to hold teachers and administrators accountable. Also, a behavior matrix could potentially make it more predictable for our parents whenever they come. Increase in parent communication, more training for our staff, particularly in restorative practices and classroom management. After our meetings, Student Code of Conduct Revision Committee has agreed to the following revisions. Addition of attendance policy. We do have one in our board doc, our board policy. However, it's not in the actual policy. It's not actually in the Student Code of Conduct. We also want to expand on that and put expectations for attendance, highlight chronic absenteeism and truancy, what that actually entails or means, and also interventions to support for kids that suffer from chronic absenteeism and how we are going to tear down barriers to ensure our kids are in school. Updated infractions, making sure that we have infractions that's applicable to various behaviors. Also classifications of infractions, minor, moderate, major, and severe. 4, behavior matrix, emphasis on interventions and support with options for consequences when administrators and team deem restorative practice and interventions alone would not properly address the behavior. We want to focus more on maximums instead of minimums, okay? Language for discipline of students with disabilities, essentially just putting state law actually into the code of conduct, okay? And policy for student and locker searches, which has been big at the high school as well, which is, again, state law. Right now, again, we're building it. We should have it ready for our next board meeting for approval after our superintendent approves the revisions for code of conduct. Our revision committee will be a standing committee, something that we do every year to, keep up and make modifications when applicable or when necessary. Anybody got any questions?
Just curious.
Yes, ma'am.
The stakeholder survey, who were the body of stakeholders was it?
So stakeholders, it was parents, community partners, staff, support staff, school administrators. So it was over 140, went to over 140 people.
So just to, just go back a little bit, one of the commitments that was made early, I want to say probably in January, was that we would have by now a updated code of conduct. So, what was realized in these in-person stakeholder conversations was that we need to look a little bit more closely. Once they got into the weeds, it was like, oh, we're 100% not ready to do that. Have a formal code of conduct revised top to bottom. So the guidance was to not rush this. This is too important, but it was important to provide our community as well as the board an update of where we are, and the work of Mr. Rickman as well as the entire committee, Ms. Wright, everyone that was, I see Mr. Crumrine here, who's also on the committee. Their work has been excellent, and the findings, as you can see, were worthy of still being discussed. Wanted to see that there has been significant movement and that we will still be prepared. Unfortunately, just not here in June, and I think that the rationale behind why we're not ready, I believe, is legitimate. We didn't want to rush something so important, and some things that we found we had to dig in a lot deeper than what we originally anticipated. So again, wanting to hold a commitment to June, but we do not have a completed code of conduct to bring to the board for approval at this time. So that's why Mr. Rickman is here. Again, want to appreciate Mr. Rickman for facilitating this work, but also we thought that this might be a good touch point to see if there were any other points, anything else you heard that might need to be continued to think about as we're finalizing here over the summer.
I think it was important for us to maintain the integrity of a collaborative process. So, you know, when you have a committee and obviously a school district that's moving in so many parts, you want to make sure that you hear the voices and that it's really collaborative and not just coming from the school administrators. So.
I really appreciate that. I appreciate your work here. I also appreciate the comment you made at the end about this being a standing committee. Oh, for me, the conversation is about the code, but also the implementation of the code.
Yes.
What we found this year was the confusion that there was no code because we were missing on the implementation, and there was a code. Fully agree that the more stakeholders who are involved in this revision, the more stakeholders who are aware there is a code, but also there's the communication piece, looking at you, Robert, the parent education piece, the student education piece, because for me, I'll always go back to how was there such a shared misunderstanding across a number of stakeholders, and how do we make sure that once there is a revised code, it goes back to the previous conversation about the strategic plan, that there's buy-in, that there's whatever training. I love the matrix idea. I use it in my own work in a number of ways, but I think any time you roll out something like this with maybe whatever is going to be new, and if we're trying to course correct, and also being aware that we have new people in the district, so taking more time to make sure that it's more than just we checked a box and now there's a revised code, but how do we actualize that in the district?
I think, and those are great questions. Obviously, you know, in any code of conduct, the threat is always going to be turnover too as well. We've had significant turnover. Like when I first got here, I was trying to figure out what do we have in place, what don't we have in place, what do we have in place that we don't use. And when you don't have that connection with people with institutional knowledge to help you, and when we're not being guided by policy, you know, instead of our discretion, it's tough. It's tough. In addition to that, I know we've been having discussions in our committee, in our revision committee, about acknowledgement of the form, like when kids come get their IDs at the beginning of the school, ensuring that everybody has access to it, parents acknowledging, students acknowledging, they become familiar with it as well. Obviously, that's important because whenever you do have situations where students violate the code of conduct, as a parent, it should be predictable on what's going to happen. You know, if my kid gets caught for vaping, I should know already that when I get to the school, I'm gonna have a parent conference, Macy mental health specialist, Southeast Coalition may be supporting them, and possibly, depending on, they could be suspended no more than these particular days. You know, where everything is predictable, I think that eases everybody where we're not functioning in, you know, an ambiguous area.
Right.
So where parents don't think you're picking on my kid or whatnot because you're using your own discretion. There's nothing like relying on policy.
Yep.
And I also love the way you framed it, makes me think of building on it as a social contract too, because in its most ideal form, that's what a code of conduct is, right? And the more that can be explicitly stated and expected too, going back to the point of this being a standard expectation, I think is really beneficial.
I've got, as you said, like, is there anything to touch on? Code of conduct, will it flow over into like extracurricular activities, whether it be band, choir, robotics, sports, all that type of stuff for it?
So ironically, I'm currently working on our student athlete code of conduct as well. So haven't thought about extracurricular as well. I know me and Mrs. Wright been having a conversation about that, but we are gonna do a student athlete code of conduct, and it should flow. But code of conduct is going to cover everyone. Obviously, with athletics and extracurricular activities, you have to have more detail in particular instances. So, like, if I don't come to practice or I haven't been here in a week, what happens, you know, so.
Mine's thinking that like, will the coaches, if a kid gets caught, say you're dental vaping, and they're at robotics, I'm gonna take that one. They're at robotics, they're vaping, does the robotics coach know, and have they been trained or gone over what the code of conduct is, who they need to contact, and what needs to happen? To know, like, do kids know and understand whatever is in their extracurricular activity also applies or falls under code of conduct? Or I guess part of my question is, does it fall under the code of conduct?
That's standard, but I don't think we have any language, you know, that, again, that we rely on. I know as the athletic director, usually if somebody is, you know, they gets in trouble, usually I let that coach know if they're not in the district or in the school, and we bring the parent in, we end up talking about it. If they have a consequence, we talk about that. If they have a suspension, then obviously they may end up missing a game because they're not able to play. So we usually don't put more on that plate, but more so, like I said, when we start talking about restorative practices, it's about building those relationships. And I think just our overarching goal, that needs to be our approach. Building relationships, building positive relationships, being proactive, being preventative, so that we can get the best out of our kids.
And kind of to your point, I think I hear it's like not in the conduct exactly. It is in our general policies on students that anything that they are a student in, all our rules apply, right? But then to your point, I don't think, especially, you know, we're talking about lack of specificity for when they're in the classroom. I would imagine it's not there at all for beyond that, right?
Yeah, mine just wanna make sure when we look at the training and how do we spread it out, of like, knowing that we do have coaches, we do have people that work with us and do other activities, of like, how do we make sure they're aware of what they need to do to communicate it back to, be it the principal, be it restorative practice, whoever it is, to make sure it's all kids know that, just that, what they do in school, it falls out into extracurricular for them.
See, overall, I think that's just a great point anyway. I'm not even focused on that part. The fact that we get kids in extracurricular activities, that's more leverage for support, that's more person to hold a kid accountable, and that's a component or a variable that helps that kid have a sense of belonging. So overall, that's our focus, and I'm gonna always say that, so.
I would just add that when I started here, I asked about the code of conduct for student transportation. And it doesn't exist, right? So when a student misbehaves on the bus, how does that behavior translate to, what's happening in the school and holding them accountable? Whereby I would ask the bus driver, what happened? Oh, I told the principal. And that would be it. So there needs to be a report, there needs to be ramifications for that behavior, because obviously it has huge impact potentially on safety on the bus, right? So we're looking at including a component with respect to transportation in that code of conduct.
And I guess my only thing would be that just I was trying to look and see when our August meeting is, as to whether or not, will that be before, will that be before, all of our, I'm thinking MyStar, stuff, will it be before, MyStar stuff goes out to parents to recheck all that stuff in, to be able to have, you're saying, how do we get everybody to do that buy-off, to know this is what it is, to have, but I don't know if that's gonna be after that or not.
I
can't
would
see
say
the
that
meetings.
if it would be tight, because even if we do get it, it would be tight. If we still are with the same cadence for our meetings, that will bring us likely very close to the first day of school, and likely most students they're registered by then.
Yeah.
So we will, I think that Felicia, Juan, and us will need to think about what that might look like, that rollout, are there other opportunities to still pull that in and get that info out in the way that it needs to be, so. Gotta stay.
I honestly, I think it would be in place, just not formally, because you guys have to vote on it, that it would be done. We have
It'll be
subcommittees right now. Tawanya Robinson is heading attendance right now because she's over MTS as well, all right? I'm doing the behavior matrix, at least leading that, subcommittees. Katie is doing infractions right now, because when she looked at it the most, especially at upper, and Diana as well, some of the infraction doesn't fit the behavior. So a kid does need something, they're trying to address it or, classify it, and it's not anything there to fit. So we want to make sure that that's covered, that we're always covered, so. Yep.
No, I
And-
appreciate everybody you've gotten involved with it, and covering all those bases, to make sure.
Yeah, we trying our best. It was a few parents that were here that, been involved too. So, anybody has any questions, reach out to me via email or on my phone. I'm always accessible. Always willing to hear you guys' perspective too. So, I ain't the smartest person in the room. I just want to have the smartest room, so.
Thank you, Ms.
Have a
Brickman.
blessed one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 8, we didn't have any full consent agenda items. Our next committee of the whole meeting and regular board meeting, we need to get that schedule out. So those dates are to be determined. Item 11, Eagles Points of Pride.
I would like to go first.
Go for it.
Have a little bit of a different kind of point of pride. So first off, I want to say I'm proud that we had participation in this meeting, not just actually in person, but knowing that there were a lot of people interested in being part of the budget hearing, hearing about code of conduct. So I want to encourage continued growth in that participation, clarifying to people that this annual budget hearing and vote is a state mandated checkpoint, that in reality, the functional budget is crafted and managed in an iterative process. So attend the committee of the whole meetings, listen to our ongoing budget talks, make public comments via email or at meetings following that, and participate in the dynamic planning process, because really that is the community, the whole district community informed document, board adopted, that guides all our policy, bylaw, budgetary, as well as evaluation and oversight processes and decisions. Also, again, highlight my pride for I think this represents a lot of, at least all the educators and board members in this room, the collective effort that's being made across the state to ask for more funding for schools for 24-25. And I want to encourage community members to get in on that advocacy effort because they are still in committee conference. There's still time to sway what happens. 3 easy asks that are no cost to the state right now. Eliminate the mandated 3% employee contribution that school employees are paying into the school healthcare retirement fund. That's an effective 3% raise for all staff. Reinvest the savings by reducing the district's contribution to that same fund by 7%. That's estimated to give schools at least $450 more per student per year, and that's savings that will continue. As well as encourage the legislatures to reduce the historic transfer of money from the school aid fund to cover general fund obligations. There's currently an ask out there right now by associations that we're all parts of to cut that by at least 25% for this next year. That would free up another $270 per student per year to schools. Just for what it's worth, the collective transfers equate to about $1.2 billion every year out of school aid into general fund. That's over $900 per student per year for every school. So MEJC, Michigan Education Justice Coalition, has letter templates. MEA has a template. MASA, so Superintendent's Association, has a template. We passed a resolution folks can use as a jumping off point, or you can contact, I won't say everyone, but I'd like to thank everyone. And know that these 3 asks won't fix everything, but they will give us time to advocate for the heavier lifts that need to be done, including 2 years out constitutional convention reforming how we finance and govern. Thank you.
I'll just get some Yes, I have 2, but I'm just gonna do 1, in that it was a fantastic graduation season and the ceremonies and seeing the excitement, the joy, the wonder, the adventure in everyone's faces. It was particularly special for me this year, but again, all 3 commencement ceremonies were wonderful. They went off without a hitch, and it's the highlight, I think, of being a board member and a part of the community to see the excitement and the graduation and the futures of all these kids. So that was my highlight. If the second one doesn't happen, I'm going to go again.
I'll jump in. I have 2. Mine was also just a big shout out to us finishing out our graduation season. I want to give a big shout out to the teachers, the students for finally flying out of the nest, and the parents who helped get them there. And then my second shout out, I know we've been doing it a few times this year, but I want to shout out Camille and Felicia again. I know it's been somewhat of a tough year, but I just want to commend you guys on the work that you did to just helping our district halfway through our school year and just carrying that workload. Also with the support of your stellar team that supports you guys. And just from my heart, I just want to say thank you for all that you did for our district this year. That is it.
I'm going to jump in here, and first one for me is the ribbon cutting at the new lower last Monday. Fabulous job to the team for organizing it. I was amazed at all the community participation. Felicia, great job getting us to this point. It was just awesome to be in the building and hear people's excitement and enthusiasm for that learning space. A couple others. The marching band is playing the national anthem at the Tigers game this Tuesday, the 25th. If anyone wants an excuse to hang out at the ballpark and support the marching band kids. Also just want to shout out all the people who were right back in the building this week for the kids who are in summer school and credit recovery. Feels like their break was a blink, and they're back at it. As the wife of an educator, I find it very amusing that people talk about education as a 9-month job. We all know that that is, if that was ever true, there's no truth to it anymore. So just really appreciate the commitment of the folks who are assisting with all of the summer school opportunities in our buildings.
Yeah, go ahead, yeah.
I want to shout out our Superintendent Hibbler. Last week, June 12th, she was featured as a panelist on a webinar with Hanover Research, along with another superintendent, talking about strategies for transitioning superintendents in the district. And so it was really impactful to hear you speak about your experiences and know that you've had some positive experiences that you can share and share with others. And I also, along with Jonathan, want to shout out Deputy Superintendent Wright. I know logistically all of the planning that you've had to do this summer with the planning for the moves and all of the, the ribbon cutting and all of that, you and your team have done a fantastic job. And I know how stressful it can be, especially just moving a household. I can't imagine. So kudos to you and your team for that.
I feel like everybody took all the stuffs. Mine is first just to, all of the staff, all the teachers, all the parents, all the students that finished out the year, and it felt long and it felt very quick at the same time, but that everybody got there and finished it. To the schools, was at multiple of the move-ups from one school to another, and just how great of a job I think the district does at making each of those moves important, but also highlighting that our graduation from high school is the goal for what we want to get to. So appreciate all that for it. And want to just, same as everybody I feel like has hit on, and Jonathan, just thank you guys for it. It was a challenging year, and that you stepped up and took it on, even though it may not have been what you wanted to do at the beginning. But appreciate just that it's been a breath of fresh air, I would say, to the district, and just appreciate what you've been able to do yourself, your entire team. And it's been fun the last 6 months. So as much as they were crazy, it's been a good one.
Crazy fun.
So thank you.
Okay. You took a number of mine as well, so I'll try to say something that was not stated, which is I would like to talk about the staff kickball game. Did I take yours? Okay. Which I will say was absolutely the idea was to engage the district. We wanted to just have some good old-fashioned fun. And I will just say that there was a number of things I wasn't sure about. First of all, the weather. Second of all, it's the last day of school. Our staff really going to show up? And I just need to give a shout out to Mr. Rickman for making sure we had the kickball field, the lines, it was very official. It was very official. Mr. Tolbert for all of the service awards and combining some of our traditional activities at the end of the year with a new fun way to engage staff. And just the staff, my hope is that they feel appreciated. They feel like the district wants to engage with them, wants to hear from them, which was what the kickball game honestly was rooted in. So I hope that they feel appreciated, even if they weren't there. They wanted to go and take their last day, that's great too. But it's officially summer for those that do get a summer. I hope it is restful. I would just like to just say thank you. I think that thank you to the board, thank you to the team. Thank you to the parents. It has been, honestly, I don't even fully have all the words to articulate the support and like the rallying around me. I couldn't do any of it without all of the support. And I'm humbled, I'm appreciative, and I think that you all are the epitome of Eagle excellence, and I'm grateful. That's it.
Okay, I'm gonna say ditto. But the kickball game was really a highlight for me, although I didn't get a chance to play, like I was at a bond meeting. But I was there enough just to see the faces, like there were teams that really took it seriously, they practiced, they were ready for the game. It was just a lot of fun. Another highlight obviously being the ribbon cutting for New Lower, right? And Robert, I want to thank him publicly because he really worked hard on it also. But to see the children's faces, right? I almost cried. I was like, don't lose it. But to see their faces and their anticipation just to get inside the building, and then the endless time they wanted to stay on the playground, it was just, it's worth it. Everything that we've gone through and continue to go through, it's worth it. And the teachers are completely moved in, which is really, really nice. And many of them have already begun unpacking their rooms and staging them. And then the other overall highlight for me is just another year of growth and change. It's my first year in Ferndale and full year in Ferndale, and although it's been ebbs and flows, right? It's been a really, really big learning opportunity, and I'm so appreciative of the opportunity. And I also want to talk about just thank you all for your support. I have not felt this before. And I've been doing this a really long time, and so it is refreshing, and it also is motivating to do the absolute best to make certain that this district shines for what it is. It really is a diamond, and I'm appreciative for the community and the support.
So I'm gonna say ditto as well. I'm gonna bring it up anyway, the kickball game, because I've been around a lot of years, and I've gone to the last day, like luncheon, barbecue. I mean, it's gone through a lot of iterations. I think this year's last day was probably the first time that everyone in attendance was smiling. Like, there weren't like grumbly faces. I mean, so I was the unofficial scorekeeper. I'll have to admit that I stopped counting after a while, because it was just like FMS is out here to annihilate everyone.
Oh my God. I did not know that.
UHS, though, did come dressed the best, I'm just gonna say. And it's been one heck of a year. I mean, I don't think it's been 9 months. It feels like it's been 9 years. Like, we've had one heck of a year this year, with a lot of ups and downs. And I, too, just want to extend immense appreciation to the cabinet, to superintendent and the deputy superintendent, because what we have gone through, even though it seemed like a decade, it wasn't all torture. I mean, there were a few torturous moments. So I'm looking forward to next year, where I'm hoping we're just riding the wave. New building, people are settled. Those of you who work over the summer, remember to take a break, because you're gonna need it. Got work to do. 12, request to go into closed session to discuss negotiations.
What do you need there?
Do you have to name?
With,
Camille, 2, 3.
You don't need that.
no Don. Okay, so with superintendent, deputy superintendent, and director of HR. So
I'll make a motion to go into closed session to discuss negotiations with the board, superintendent, deputy superintendent, and HR.
I'll second.
Okay, moved by Sarah, seconded by Mary. Roll call, Ms. Shepherd.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yep.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Excuse me, board, if you don't mind, I would love to get a photo of us today in our colors. Just like a little,
And I what?
just like a little photo.
Well, yes, at 9:50.